Welcome, everybody. Call this meeting to order here at 6. Please sign in if you haven't done so. I assume I only need one public comment card. And you got to put the pledge back on there. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have roll calls? Are they ready?
Roll call. Dr. Breckenridge-Pettit is not here tonight. Dr. Hill?
Here.
Mr. Hawks should be joining us later. Mrs. Lundberg? Here. Mrs. Pascal? Here. Ms. Schuckman? Here. And Mr. Smith?
Here. Board member comments. Opening the floor to my fellow board members.
I would like to say that I enjoyed the board conference in this. Oh, hold on. I would like to say I enjoyed the board conference in the Springs. I learned some things. I'm always learning things regarding the board, and enjoyed getting to know my teammates better. So thank you for that.
Glad you were able to make it this year. Okay. Beautiful. Public comments. Evelyn, you're up so fast.
I want to say Merry Christmas. I hope you all enjoyed your
Thank you.
presents. So, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Very good.
But I do have presents for you. But I always get you a little something.
She's. There's a good chance mine is black, and there's a whole lot of. Jody, we can take her.
Jody,
Yeah.
Jody, all right.
So you're taking Jody's. No, everybody does. I want to say thank you for your hard work. I tried to write your names on there, but the fluffies, I should have used glitter.
I am appreciative. You did not use glitter.
You were still a Joey to me.
That's
no
fair.
matter what.
That's fair.
Still a Joey.
You've known me for a while.
I drove him. I've been here way too long.
It's like a 20-year mark. If you've known me longer than that, I'm Joey.
Aaron. Oh, you're fine. Honey. Kim. David. Everybody got one, right? Yeah. I want to say thank you for all your hard work. This year has been a rough one, but we've got through it. Everybody's pulled with what they've had to pull, transportation. Unfortunately, next year may seem a little stretched, but we'll keep the bus rolling. And thank you to everybody else for all your hard work and determination. Keeping our kids safe and loving. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn.
I added it to my hand.
I saw you.
It's not working.
You sparkled it up tonight. I appreciate that. All right. Looking to. I don't see any changes to the agenda. Whoa! Look how good we're getting. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
Jen, anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts? Ready for vote?
We'll start with Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Give Mr. Hobbs a moment to get settled in. Should I ask for his vote if he walks in?
I think you're okay. Just go.
Okay, I'm gonna stick it for a minute now.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lundberg? Aye. Mrs. Pascal?
Aye.
Ms. Schuckman?
Aye.
And Mr.
All right, no guest reports, but we have 2 campus reports, so one of you will be treated like a guest report. It looks like Corey and Longfellow is up first. And you let him. That's what everything.
We're trying to Canva here, and so doing? Okay, am I on? You're on. Okay, so last year I had my two amigas with me. Jen's over being a timer for the swim meet right now, and Kelly is single parenting this week with in-laws, and so they both have a lot going on. So I'm flying solo. Just wanted to start off here. There's our beautiful building perspective. I think we're 10 years old now, right? And so that one kind of hits us a lot. Like, and so building's beautiful. We love it to death. It is fantastic. But that just kind of put it into perspective for me. Right there, this is our building motto: every kid safe, every kid learning, every kid loved. You'll hear David say a lot of times by name and by need, and that's our own little twist on it. And that really serves as the foundation for everything we do in the building. A couple board meetings ago, David shared these charts with us, or with you all, and I just kind of wanted to start there. No testing is the end all be all, but we're really proud. Our upper left quadrant is our fourth grade math scores. That's achievement. That is number one in the state for the last 3 years in a row. You bounce over to the next upper right is ELA, once again, achievement, and top 5 in the state for the last 3 years. The bottom two, those only have 2 bars because their gross scores got a little wonky with COVID, but once again, top in the state. And so I did a little further digging. I was like, well, how many people is this and what is this? I was kind of digesting it. There's over 1,100 elementary schools in the state that this is compared with, and so that's a big number. And even just looking at some of the names on there, when you have Cheyenne Mountain and some of those, having been a metropolitan kid, those you have I guess it's almost like a monoculture in those areas in which all the kids have similar economic background. And one of the things I love about living in a small town is that we get the cross section. And so we get every kid in our door, from the doctor's kids on the way down to the kid whose mom's working 3 jobs and they're struggling. So I think this is our big highlight. This is a pride moment. And so then it kind of is, how do we get there? And so I went to each team and I was like, what is it about your team? What do you guys do? And this is kind of the journey I'm going to take you guys on here, is just what happens at each grade level. So kindergarten is really when academics kick in. It's letters, it's numbers, writing their names, just the foundations of reading and math operations. And really the big one is that, and then transitioning some of the social emotional stuff, learning to be lifelong learners, helping parents, helping students, learning to share the world with peers. If you go into a kindergarten classroom on the first day of school, everybody's talking at once, and everybody wants the spotlight on them. As the year goes on, that starts to fade, and that's in large part to our fantastic kindergarten teachers. So first grade is a huge growth year. So first grade is where reading really comes alive, writing comes alive, math comes alive, and students really start to grow in their independence. It's structurally, if being in our building, if you haven't been in our building, come say hi. When you walk first grade, they've gained independent. They start dependent, but as they leave, they're more confident, and just their conversations with you are just much fuller, and they've learned to wait their turn. So then we rock and roll into second grade. I sometimes tongue-in-cheek, I call second grade the puberty of elementary school. And this is really, they're building on those reading skills, the comprehension. They're learning place value, multiplication kicks in, division kicks in. They focus a lot on social studies and getting local history in there. And the big one is really understanding themselves and building on relationships. And so we see that, as I say, kind of becoming their own human. We start to see that in our behavior. We definitely have more behaviors at second grade, and that's just part of their development. So then we shift to third grade. I don't know what that is. That's pretty cool. Okay, it's timing me. Third grade, I said moving on up because third grade goes upstairs, and that's a big moment in our building. Shifting to reading to learn as a tool to learn, greater understanding of multiplication and division strategies and breaking things down. The old days of route learning, do 1 through 20 odd, aren't there anymore. And really the state and even the science of math has grown incredibly. And it's getting into a deeper understanding of mathematics and how to deconstruct, reconstruct numbers, what it means when you're multiplying, what it means when you're adding, all those sorts of things. Social studies and science, they're looking at the past and how that impacts our lives today. Growing more in their social, learning to treat others and themselves with respect, using communication skills to support those positive interactions. Fourth grade that's the big banner one. That was the scores you saw back there. And it is complex math, reading comprehension, hands-on experiments, community-focused social studies projects, increasing writing skills. We're getting full research projects happening at that age, and preparing for middle school. I was just in the classroom this morning, all the way down to filling out a planner, organization, all those basic life skills and how to be successful at middle school are happening at that level. Then we rock into specials, and specials are truly special. This is something as a classroom teacher that shifting into administration that I've grown to realize the value and importance of specials, because sometimes a kid that struggles in other areas, it gives them a place to shine, and they love it. Art, music, PE, library, tech are our big specials. They try new skills. There's a lot of cross-curricular that happens in there. I did an observation in art this week in which they were talking 3D shapes as with kindergartners, cones, cylinders, triangles, as they were making their clay penguins for the upcoming holiday winter season. So there's a lot of them working with peers and collaboration, and so they're working on those work habits, creative problem solving. As I was in, how do I get my beak to stick? And it was like, okay, well, what have you tried? And just getting them to think through it. One kid in particular, he's on an IEP, and he is just a fascinating. I'd done another observation in his classroom, and the teacher's like, yeah, we're really focused on communication. We're focused on, his attention span and how long he can attune to a topic. And so I was sitting in there and I watched this kid for the full 25-minute, because it was a kindergarten special, focus on that penguin, ask for help. And so it was just like one of those, it's such a beautiful moment. So specials are fantastic. Over there on the right, you see our recorders, the kids playing those. That's a big fourth grade one, and all the parents thank us because they get to hear the recorder. Here's our teams. These are the ones that make it happen from kindergarten first. This is what I call our tier 1 teams. This is what every kid gets. As I look at these teams and I think of myself in this position in the last 2 years, I have had a new person on each one of these teams and on the subsequent slides. There's retirement, there's people for for different reasons. And then we get the domino effect. But it's been great, and we have fantastic people in these positions. I'm really proud of that. So then this is our tier 2, tier 3 team. We've got our special education teachers, our paraprofessionals. Those guys are the ones that are out there supporting those special education teachers. Our title in math interventionists, as well as down at the bottom our Alpine Achievers members. Then we've got our ELL team, and so DJ that you guys brought on for us to help us as a district last year has been working out fantastic. Maggie, as you all know, and Carol comes in and helps administer some of our WIDA assessments. And then we have our speech, our OT, and our school psych. And so Stacy and Kara are our 2 speech teachers. Cindy Hayes is our occupational therapist, and Sarah Rebo is our time school psych that we share with ECC. Our support team is custodial, kitchen, lunch, and recess, and they matter in a big way. Our day custodian, Sean Gary, is there every day working with kids, helping build those, just the simple skills. These are the things, as we talk on life skills, like I personally believe every kid needs to know how to wipe down a counter, and not just the quick wipe, and how to dump their tray and how to take care of themselves. And so from custodial to kitchen, our kitchen staff knows every kid by name, to our outside recess crew, and also in the lunchroom helping get, we've been averaging well over 300 lunches every single day. The kids go through the line in USDA regulations. That last kid goes through the line, a timer starts, and they have to have 20 minutes. Typically, we're getting a grade level of just under 100 kids through that line in about 5 minutes and in their place and eating. And then shipping them out to recess while the tables get clean. We call it flipping the room, just like you would in a restaurant. We flip the room, we get it all cleaned, and then boom, the next crew comes in. And so I'm just proud of our support team, and even, hearing Evelyn here earlier. It's not always easy, but it works. Then here's our office team, me, myself, and then our Dean, Jen Lang, Counselor Kelly, Nurse Missy, and then our secretaries. And the communication here, kid specific, is fascinates me on how Betty's taken the phone call on an absence, and there's a impromptu meeting that happens every single day on here's the stomach aches, here's the headaches, here's what's going on with each one of those kids. Just last Friday, I pushed out a letter because we had a kind of a big spike in norovirus, and sent out everybody's puking letter to the families. And that was all in that conversation between Betty and Missy, and then having other kids come in throughout the day. And so the system works. So then this one was a kind of a fascinating thing, because at the start of the year I was thinking, geez, we have a lot of staff with seniors. So over here, this first graph is we have 11 staff that graduated from Salida High School that work in our building. Right here, this is the number of generations in those families that have graduated. And so we have one teacher who's like a 5th generation Salida person, all the way down to 1st generations. And so just fascinating how deep these roots run, and how much our school, all of our schools, are part of our community. These are grades of kids throughout our district. Right there's our 4 seniors this year. We've got 6 that are in 4th grade this year, 2 kinders, That's just all within our staff. And then here's our graduates. And they're not actually, that one's weird, but we have our seniors right there. And so then, once again, community school. Here's our partners that we work with: Salida Police and Fire in the typical, and that is our drills and that kind of stuff. But all the way down, that second to the right photo, and is the bike rodeo that they do every year for fourth grade. Big shout out to Sean Gillis for putting that one together. That's on its 17th year. Sol Vista, we have a new clinician. They wrote a grant, and so we have a new clinician that's been working with us and also is working on family engagement, which we're excited for because our school counselor has 450 kids, and she can connect on short-term kind of stuff, but some of our kids have been through some pretty intense trauma and they need a deeper level of therapy. And so by having that bridge with Sol Vista and having Allie's her name in our building, we've been able to, one, increase our daytime visits, because it's not always easy for our families to be able to schedule outside of the school day. And then also our engagement, families that have struggled with getting signed up for Sol Vista, we can say, hey, come in at this time, and our counselor Kelly will sit with Allie and sit with the families and just make sure that all that intake paperwork and stuff happens. DHS, throughout the years, we have our liaison. LPA has a long history of being fantastic and funding stuff. One thing that we're looking at this year is playground equipment, and hearing that presentation last year about ADA accessible at the middle school is an area that we're leaning into this year. LPA is going to be putting part of that, and the other part I'm going to be throwing into some of my capital requests. Boys and Girls Club at elementary school really is like a huge community partner for what they charge and what they provide for families who really need it. I just can't say enough about them. Them being in a new building, for years they were at St. Joe's, and it almost, you could almost feel it starting to dwindle, and them in their new building has brought new life, and they're just fantastic. FYI, Rotary this year, they've always done the dictionary give for noon Rotary. This year we flipped into illustrated novels because we were hearing from families who had 6 kids that they have a shelf at home with 6 dictionaries collecting dust, and it was fun to see the excitement and see the kids tearing those apart. Absolute Bikes, like I said, Sean Gillis. Local artists, we've got a couple local artists. One that just, and we don't, in an art town, it's always hard to, I say, we'll take the art. We don't promote the artists because there's just too many artists in town, and we've got to kind of have an even playing field. But we've got a piece outside that was permanently mounted a couple of years ago that was donated. And then we have a gentleman that just comes in and he's like, hey, I've got some pieces. We had a bench that was donated. AHRA, I met with them a couple weeks ago. Something new that we brought on a couple years back is the PFD, or Life Jacket Give, for third graders. And kind of started here. Then it went Buena Vista. Last year it went Canyon City. They're looking at Leadville. And a lot of our conversation was, how do we scale this statewide? How do they, and make something that could be the foundation for something nationwide? And really, it's like we're the perfect place. We are the river town in the state, hands down. And so just having kids be aware of that. SOSS and our caring community members. And I should probably touch on caring community members. Those ones are, we have people that come in and say, we got money. What do you guys need? And so we will put that into a contingency account, and that is always used for kids getting on field trips, kid needs shoes, just like kind of those weird one-offs, whatever we need. We don't ever want to have any kid wanting. Building goals, PBS, we continue to expand that. We keep pushing and growing. We're kind of seeing now, it started 6 months before I came into the position, and now we're starting to see those behavior trends, like actually a decrease in behavior incidents. And so we keep growing there. MTSS, identifying more specifically for all staff. As a classroom teacher, you kind of get into your world and you're like, I just need to know how to help this kid. So one thing that we already have in place is an MTSS flow chart that says, hey, you got a kid that's struggling. And it's just a piece of paper that you can walk through, and it just says, here's the kid's name, here's the number one thing we want to focus on, and here's their strengths. And then it just has all the steps underneath. And then rocking around. This is why we do what we do. These are some of our kiddos, and this is their take on what makes Longfellow special. We're going to start at the top with little Miss Penelope here. Kim. What? Let's see. Yeah. Service, you going to come help? Okay, let's see. Kim, do you know this one on Kim? I got finger on it.
On the Hutchinson homestead, because we would really fun and had to do all kinds of fun activities.
Okay. Well, wait for the blue to go away.
We went to Maysville Firehouse, Maysville School, Maysville Smokes. Probably went to
I like that one because she's affirming. She's there, like providing the support. You know, as I started with the test scores and that kind of, that's not what the kids are going to remember. That's not what anybody remembers about their elementary school. I'm not sure.
We went through that when teachers really nice, the music was great, and you can remember that it was a great school.
And then my last little friend here, Miss Lucy.
Was on either the pumpkin patch and the swimming.
And so she brought up the swimming pool every year. This is one of those partnerships that I didn't highlight, and I should have, is us and Parks and Rec. Every kid going through swim lessons. And I don't know if you read the news, but getting kids signed up to swim lessons is a thing now. And, so, you know, just like talk to your friends in the Front Range and that kind of stuff. They can't get their kids into swim lessons. And that is a fantastic partnership with us. And so now it's just question time. Anything you guys have? Yeah.
So lots of successes. Good
Uh-huh.
job on you and your team. What do you have any goals or what, since you are so successful, what
We always
struggles are you having?
We always have goals. We always have struggles. It's that we do in a constant tweak. It came over last week, and we're always, she's got her job of making sure kids get to their places on time, and that this whole system is working. And so, just those little adjustments of moving a bus to the front of the line. That's a little one. Big one is, we want to 100% maintain our academic success. And so that is, for myself, I realized that getting data into the teacher's hands is key. I don't with it. It was at a professional development we had a couple of years ago. and I was talking about how to pull these new reports, both from Dibbles and from NWEA, and I lost the room quickly. And there's moments when you're teaching where you kind of lose the room, and then you got to kind of listen and see how you lost the room. Are they talking about what they did this weekend? No, they're tearing apart the data. There's shoulder partner, and they're looking at the kids, and so that one's always going to be there. Every kid safe, every kid learning, every kid loved is really it. And so we're always tweaking our safety and just little things. Our maintenance staff came in and added more screening around our playground. We're going to kind of continue to have that, and that's just yeah. And so those are just the constant conversations we've had. Little things on our playground. A couple of years back, we added the fence just to make it more contained. We've had a few playground pieces of equipment that have disappeared just because of, as we were looking at accidents and that kind of stuff, just making sure. And then we have the other end of the spectrum where we want to have kids be kids. And so a kind of a fun one this year, it's called Rock City, is there's the big landscaping rocks. We're in a corner of the playground. I haven't told you this yet. It's just play along. And I mean, they're these big landscaping rocks, and the kids started, for years they've ignored them, and they started stacking them, and then it became Rock City, and Rock City took on a life of its own. It was either Rock City or Rocktopia, or each grade had their own thing. Fourth grade had taxes. They had a government structure that was built into this. Just the other day, I went and I could see that they had taken there's some very specific, I don't know, it's kind of a purpley crystal in some of the rocks. And so those were stacked into their own circle. And so, I don't know, a lot of my job is letting the magic happen, both with staff and kids and all that kind of stuff, and staying out of the way and just enabling things to happen as we talk PFDs and bikes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Right. Mic drop.
Mic drop. Great. Thank you.
All right.
Are we shifting computers?
Start. Yes. So yeah, Crest Academy, 5th through 8th grade. Bottom will go away, but it's not letting me use my. Oh. Okay, sweet. Who works at Crest? So we have 4 gen ed teachers. We have a 0.5 special education teacher. She is part-time Crest, part-time HEA. We have 1 counselor. We have a part-time secretary because she also does special education for the district. We have a half-time principal, myself, and then we have our district psychologist, Jessica Benna. So enrollment posted the last couple of years, so you can kind of see how we've increased. This year we took a risk and we increased 5th and 6th grade because our 7th and 8th grade were were not high enough, and we had no one left on our waiting list. So we wanted to make sure our enrollment was at 60. So we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, there continues to be a trend, no matter how hard we are trying to keep our 8th graders. A lot of them They just want to go to the bigger school to have that bigger school experience. And that's obviously something we can't offer at the Crest. I always reach out to those families to get feedback. Like, is there anything that you would change? Is there anything, any feedback you have for us, in hopes that we'd keep your student. And every single family that I've talked to, the parents usually want the student to stay, and the student wants that social piece and to go to the bigger school to meet more people before they go to SHS. So we are currently enrolled at 60 students. We have really pushed our 8th grade internships. It's kind of like Fred Maxwell Jr. program that Samantha Bond has really spearheaded. I'm super grateful for all the work that she has put into it. Also super grateful for all of these organizations who have helped us out and taken 8th graders. It's really cool. It's a really first glance opportunity for 8th graders to experience an internship. So they've gone this year, they have gone at various times. That's been a little bit of a scheduling puzzle, but Samantha has, of course, figured it out. And they actually just gave presentations to the whole school so that 5th through 7th graders can start to hear about some of these internships to get them pumped about it. We've also started our 8th grade legacy class. We're pushing more of our durable skills with our 8th graders. And again, trying to be creative and find ways to really push our 8th graders and their leadership. They do a lot of things around the school. They're leading whole school meetings. They're coaching and supporting other students during projects classes now. They're attending internships, as I said. They are organizing, coordinating, working at the school store. They're leading field trips. They are participating in student council. They're doing a ton of different things that are really pushing those durable skills that are really important. I always like to just kind of compare the enrollment data with SMS because often it's like, Crest is just so different. It is different. We have 60 students, right? SMS is much bigger than we are. However, I think it is important to note our IEP percentages are very comparable. But yes, big difference in percent of FRLs. So our academic data, overall, we have really high achievement at the Crest. You might look at this chart and the percent for that 7th grade math is low. However, they grew 6.2% from the previous year. That's a cohort that just historically is a little lower performing, but they did have decent growth from the previous year. But overall, I mean, 80s and 90% for the percentage of students that are meeting or exceeding expectations on CMAS. Then when we look at our MAP data, essentially the gist of it is that we have high achievement, but we have lower growth. And this is a trend I know that we've been discussing as an admin team, and we're seeing holistically across the district, but it's definitely happening a lot at Crest. So why? What's the answer behind it? Couple questions that I came up with was, are we not doing enough data analysis? Do we need to audit our curriculum? Is the growth less because they are higher achieving, right? The higher achieving you are, sometimes it's harder to make bigger growth. Is the growth lower from year to year, but over the 4 years at Crest, right? Like it's decent growth. We don't know yet, but I'm starting to dive in with my teachers, and we're doing a lot more data analysis for each unit assessment so that we're being more strategic with our reteaches. So the math data, and then this was the reading data. Again, high achieving, but lower growth. Same thing. I don't know what the magic button is, but we are being more strategic about our data analysis this year. Okay, so our priorities for this year, increased growth on MAP tests. So it worked out really well that we had already named that as one of our priorities when we got all of the data back. Additionally, we are pushing PBIS and character development. We are fortunate that we have been implementing the Wayfinder curriculum. We are super appreciative that Jessica Benna And David helped us get that into our curriculum repertoire. So we are grateful for that. And then we're working on building a curriculum scope and sequence and organization. What the CREST teachers do, in my opinion, is not sustainable, because they essentially are year to year, almost practically starting over, in a good way, in that they want to make sure it's different for each year. However, I'm worried that they are going to burn out, and it's totally okay to have a 4-year scope and sequence, right? So that we're rotating every 4 years so that kids aren't getting the same thing. And so not only is it for staff, but it's for students too, right? We want to make sure that we are keeping it interesting and exciting, and the hands-on learning is just as high achieving as it is right now. Additionally, we are working on our physical spaces. As you know, we are getting a new vestibule that just got cemented this weekend, so that's super exciting. But we're also working with Ryan O'Brien and our art class for specials. The students are painting murals in the building. We are probably about 3 years overdue to really beautify our spaces and just show more investment in the building that we are in. We've had a lot of experiential learning so far, and we have lots more to come. Essentially, I know Jody had asked kind of like, what is the connection of each of these trips to our curriculum? It depends on the trip, but for example, like the Silver Cliff overnight, that was one of our first overnights. It was a team building trip, and it was a trip where 5th graders have never been away from their parents, had an overnight, and we had upperclassmen helping them out and getting them through it, right? Like, it's scary when you're a 10-year-old and you've never been away from home. The Halloween candy, the reverse trick-or-treating, is an awesome community project that we do. We collect all the candy for the F Street houses for Halloween. We do a bunch of math behind it. We do estimations. They weigh how much candy they've collected, and how many pieces do we need to distribute. And there's a lot of math that goes into that Samantha does with them. So essentially, each of our trips, as much as yes, they are fun, we make sure obviously there is a learning component to the trip. Huge thank you. We have a ton of parent and community volunteers that help us out all the time. Huge thank you to you all. The building is very much coming along. Our outdoor space, our kids absolutely love it. I know that's something we worked on in the years past. Like I said, CREST staff, they are amazing. I want to do everything I can to keep them around as long as possible. And our CREST students are awesome. They come from LES, and they are ready to hit the ground running and really just enjoy their time at the CREST. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions? Jody would be lighting you up with some of her sense. So she may follow up, but awesome. Thank you. Any other questions from managers, principals, from the rest of the campus reports we got? I know some of them we'll be having some conversations with here later, but hearing none. David, team, district
Thanks so much. I
reports.
think you've got a great update from Aaron. I don't think we need to dive deeper into that. The work session helps you get anchored in what he's been doing. And then I don't think there's too much operations. We've just been filling positions that have kind of got a great hiring season in July. We did a lot better than a lot of our peers in the school industry. We kind of had an opening there in October where positions were opening up and not getting filled. And then really is when I need those filled. It's some great problem. So we're excited to see that come along. Is there anything else that you need to add or question you have of operations for Will?
Anybody to make sure you could check the ADA playground information. We did make a recommendation for what needed to be done, what we would like to see done, and we also had included some work at LES as an additional ask, since the company's already going to be out here anyway, to try to double up on some of that. So I'd love some feedback on that, at a later date.
Will we be exploring here as well, or is construction too much in the way?
That has not been on our current scope, Joe, but it could be in the future. I can certainly add it to the capital projects wish list. And what we're doing with some of those, and you'll see in next month, is we're prioritizing those, and some will get done this next year, and some will rise to the top for the following year, and some of the ones that are I don't want to say are not important, but that are less important will be pushed down to future years, or if there's ever additional monies.
I don't know the need of each
And I don't know,
campus for the UVCC.
services talked to some people too about looking at some turf back here, but I don't have enough information even to really comment on that right now.
And do you have any more information about grants that might be available for?
I do not know.
So the other thing I would add, individual student plans, like you talk, success is individual in nature. It's by name, each of our kids by name, their need and what their plan is. I just want to share a story with the high school staff doing some other stuff, their staff meeting. And they were talking about each plan for each kid. How can they develop it further? Next professional development, can we just bring all of our individual plans for each one of our kids and go over how to discuss that and go forward? I know we put a lot of energy with that site trying to grow that over the years. And so I'm just excited to see the district keep growing more and more into the spaces of individual understanding what a kid's success is, developing. And to bring that up, because tomorrow is what we call career day frequently. We've had many iterations, but with CMC coming on, it's allowed us to take it to the next level. Jesse, how many businesses do we have just for? So you have about 50 of your businesses tomorrow coming in, volunteering a full day. You have Colonel Pennant coming in and talking to the juniors about kind of building a dream and their success, and then go over and they have panels around different careers. They actually do interviews and go through that process with their resumes. It's very rich, and it's a community-wide effort. Just like at Corey School is a community-wide effort to teach every single kid to swim. That's individual. To teach and give every kid a PDF. To teach every kid on their bike and put every kid in a helmet. And then you get all the way, it's down to that individual level, and it is definitely community-wide. And so I just want to highlight that as something going on, because like we talk about the helmets with our fourth graders, it's been going on for 17 years. Like, it's hard when you are doing success for 17 years to get excited about it, but not everyone else gets to enjoy these kind of things for their kids and their collective community working to ensure it's that stuff that we keep getting stacked on that allows us to keep succeeding. So I just want to highlight some of those things.
I heard career day. High school.
I gave with Jessica Benner, our school psychologist, every Tuesday of the month, the first Tuesday of the month, they present another one of the pathways that you guys have looked at. I got a chance to go in and talk to the kids, and it was kind of, they sent volunteers from each of the advisories. And there was almost 80 kids that participated going through. In that case, we were talking all the different human services careers, from HR to education to social work and others. It was like getting into that specific thing of developing their ability to think for themselves, draft their own plans, and just tons to celebrate. Is there any questions you have, Will, myself, or Aaron, anything you feel like? And we have a lot of discussions today, some robust things, so I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about it.
Okay, we will take a quick break. Everybody that is not sticking around can head out of here. For all of you leaving, have a great holiday and a great break, and thank you for all that you do.
And we should take some food.
And take some food that's downstairs in the kitchen area. So take a quick 5-minute break, start back at 7. Mic's on. Okay, consent agenda. Looking for a motion of the consent agenda. Jen, questions, comments, thoughts? Take your vote.
Dr. Hill? Mr. Box? Mrs. Lumber? Mrs. Pascal? Mr. Schmidt? And Mr. Smith?
Okay, we're going to go right into discussion items. We got 4 of them. I don't know if we're keeping them all separate. I'm sure we are to some extent. But health curriculum position paper. I don't know if this is David or our 4 esteemed folks from the high school. Turn
I'll
it
give it
over.
10 seconds, and just so you can get settled in. And Matt Luttrell here, who's one of our instructors, is a PE teacher at the high school, teaching comprehensive health. That's been added in. This position paper is just a way for, there's multiple things, right? What are the policies that impact that? But I think the important part is the board saying, here's our why, here's our justification why it is part of graduation requirements. Also included in that is here's the law. I think some people aren't aware of. In 2019, if you're going to be teaching these topics, then you must teach some of these things in certain ways. And then it also provides real great clarity, and I appreciate Matt particularly. We've been leaning into this space, and he's answered and got us a lot of clarity on exactly what it is when we say we're teaching health, what that is, and you can look into that. So there's a couple different layers, but I think it is important that the board, and maybe at the end of this, one board member says, you know what, I'll help draft and clean up that initial language of what our justification and why is. I just took a stab at the original justification to get started, but I do think the board needs to own that space. So Jesse, why don't you take it from there?
I'm giving you a mic.
So SHS health curriculum. I want to thank Dr. Blackburn, Matt Luttrell, and Haley Hume. We've worked very hard over the last 6 months piloting a health curriculum. Just kind of an overview. We're going to give an overview of why we picked it and what is involved in the health curriculum. The curriculum that we piloted is ETR. I provided you with a scope and sequence and access to the ETR curriculum in your board report. Hopefully you had time to look at it. It focuses on meeting the Colorado state standards. And the objective is to provide students with comprehensive health knowledge, skills, and access to community resources for further learning. I am super proud of the work we've done. Prior to 3 years ago, we didn't have a health class. We taught health, which was embedded in the physical education classes. But, only in the last 3 years have we had the last year and a half, we've had a true health class. So super proud of that. And I would say one of the most important classes we teach at the high school. Matt, I think this is where you take over, right? Okay. Great.
Yeah, easy.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, no problem. I'm Matt Luttrell. I've had some of your kids. Some of your kids I've not. 10 years ago, when I started working here, we had a dedicated health teacher. It was Debbie Olson from FYI. She'd come in on Wednesdays, and she would teach health throughout the whole entire year. At that point, I was working on getting my licensure, and it was just set up that way. The previous PE teacher did not want to teach health, is what I was told, so that's why they brought her in. Eric Hankey was the half-time PE teacher, and I was the full-time. So our focus was to make sure she had what she needed to. We had a dedicated classroom, which was huge for health. In 17, though, we did not have Debbie come back. We felt like it was for us as a department, like it was our job to start teaching it. So we started looking into what we needed to do and how we needed to do it. And it's been a long road coming from where we started. to where we are now. But we try to in the aux gym, we'd bring tables and chairs in, and it just wouldn't work. Kids want to go in the aux gym, they want to play around. So trying to get them to calm down and be quiet and to learn was really hard for us. So then we would try to switch it over to the weight room. We had the same problem when Haley came on. We were teaching life skills, which is what the middle school was doing, but it was, to us, it was too repetitive. So we decided to get something different. And then, our world changed in 2020 with COVID. And that was really the spring semester was really the only year that we didn't touch at least sex ed in our health curriculum when we're doing it. So now ETR, which is Health Smart, we're excited about that. Jamie is the head of the PE department. PE, he came down and we sat in this room and we filled it out. And then we went up to the high school as well. And we figured out like, hey, what is our scope of sequence? What do we need to do? What do we need to teach? And ETR was just his favorite. And this is where it was really Haley's baby on it. She liked what Haley wanted to do. She was, and I was okay with it. She's way better with this than I am. My training is in strength and conditioning. And so I just echoed a lot of what Haley was doing. So I wasn't the expert in it, she was. This is what we teach. This is what we're starting to. This is kind of our scope and sequence. We're still trying to figure it out. We spent a lot of time on mental health this last semester, just due with everything that happened in the school. But we probably spent a little too much time on it. So now we're trying to play catch up and get everything done before the end of the year. I don't know if we will. We have Alliance in right now coming in and talking with the kids about consent. We started that today. So it's been really good. Personal health and health, nutrition, physical activity, which is something we've always touched, just way more depth with it. Violence is something that we try to touch at the end of the year. So why EPR? For us as teachers, it's really easy. I have two English or Spanish speaking only students in my class. And so I can print off the lesson plans right then and there and give it to them. So they're engaged with what we're doing, and I can come around. Google Translate's awesome. I can use that to help communicate what I'm trying to say to them. But they're really good with Alliance, a teacher that's in there, and she's translating as we go through for those two students. So they're more engaged in that class, and I'm proud of that. Those two young guys are a lot of fun to be around. One of the main reasons why I like it, because I can switch over really quick and easy, but it's also in mental health first aid, which is our first year of doing this. Haley and I were both trained in it. It's really good. It's for a freshman, it's probably a little too, but people can get the gist of it. And that's kind of where the curriculum goes. It's for sophomores and above, but we're trying it out with freshmen as much as we can. So. These are just some of our definitions that we use throughout consent or our healthy relations, which is what the Alliance is doing now. And again, I like to bring in our professionals because they do, and Haley and I can just help them and support them in what we see and what we need to talk about. But this is just kind of the verbiage that they use, and we try to hit it as well. And this also comes from ETR, so it lines up really good with what we're doing and what they're talking about. Calories, for me, I like to talk about nutrition. It's a lot of my background. And I really try to focus on not tracking calories, but it's the energy that you're using. So if you have my kids now, when we talked about that, that's what we focus on. It's energy, not tracking calories. So like Jesse said, you all should have this already. Our scope and sequences and what we do in this class. Mental and emotional health is a big one. Jessica does come in and can help us and provides us support with that. Sexual health, our nurses, Rebecca Caboza, she comes in, does a great job with it. She'll give 2 days. She even goes down in the lunchroom and she has this like Wheel of Fortune type thing that she'll spin. It'll land on a STI and she'll explain what it is in front of the kids. So it's comical to see that. You want to watch the kids squirm, it's a good. Yeah. Yeah. you get some good laughs at it for sure. But yeah, just your practical applications, your nutrition, understanding that BMI is not a relatable source. My entire life I've been obese. Even back when I was an athlete, I was considered obese. So I've been trying to get that across ever since I've been a teacher that we don't use this. My plate used it quite a bit when the government still funded my plate. That was always my big thing, is like, don't trust reliable sources that we can use. Injury prevention, how not to lift things that are too heavy because you might get hurt. We try to stop as much as we can, just to be safe in practices. Scope and sequence. Jess, I don't remember if you came back into the picture, but okay. So this is our perfect world. If we can hit it exactly like that, that's what we want to try to do. Mental health probably was more like 6 weeks when we did it. Nutrition and physical activities probably got shoved down to maybe 3. So we're still trying to figure that out. This is really our first semester of doing this curriculum, and it is taking time to get there. But and Haley's out on maternity leave, which is awesome. And so I've been trying to help the sub get caught up where we needed to be and also get ready for this. It's been a little rocky the last couple months. We're slowly getting there. Went through 15 tips. So it's our big point right now, and hopefully for finals. Guess we've always worked with Alliance or FYI. They've been and given this talk, and they do an awesome job. And it's great to have somebody else come in just because it's a different voice. I feel like I get pretty repetitive, and the kids they don't always hear what I need to hear. And so bringing in somebody from the outside that can talk about this, they do. It's way more impactful. And Becky does a great job too. So that's pretty much it on my end, I believe.
I think sometimes this is where administrators come in is, some parents, based on their beliefs or their values, are uncomfortable with the unit on sexual education. Colorado state law says you can opt out of those units if you are uncomfortable with them. We have an opt-out letter. I think there was a link in your scope and suite sequence where you can look at that. Last year, how many kids did we have opt out? One kid per semester. But that is an option. We want to be super transparent about what we are teaching when it comes to gender, sexuality, sexual education. All that information will be made public for the next 60 days, right, to get public input, and everybody can see exactly what we're teaching. So I think that's important. And if you are uncomfortable with it, according to Colorado state law, you can opt out. Example, some assessment questions up there. That first question, Fry's model of consent. I know consent has been a pretty important topic for us over the last semester with some of the things that have happened at the high school. This is the model that the Alliance uses when they teach consent or reversible. Consent may be revoked. Informed consent is only consent if all parties are fully aware of what they are consenting to. Enthusiastic, you must be enthusiastic when you give consent. And specific, right? Just because you said yes to one sexual act doesn't mean you consented to all sexual acts, right? I think that's important to talk about. When we talk about consent, we are very specific on what we teach. When we talk about gender, we talk about specific definitions for gender. So folks are literate when they leave that health class, right? They are prepared to go into the real world with definitions on gender and sexuality. So this is a robust curriculum that's aligned with Colorado state standards. Matt and Haley encourage students to continue their learning outside the classroom. I think an important piece of this health curriculum is when they bring in experts that they collaborate with. So next steps. So we'll publish the curriculum on the website and give the community an opportunity to review it for the next 60 days. We'll close it on February 4th. We'll make updates based on recommendations from the feedback and ask for board approval in February. The scope and sequence, the other document that you had in your board report, it's pretty detailed where you can go into the website and literally look at each lesson that Matt and Haley are teaching throughout the semester. There's also links in there to supplemental materials that the Alliance is using, and Nurse Becky Capose is using also. So I think the most important piece of this is we want to be completely transparent in what we are teaching in that health curriculum, and the purpose is to make our kids educated, right? Educate our kids to those important topics. Questions? Karen.
So this curriculum and this age group, we know that they are highly influenced by their peers.
Absolutely.
And we are teachers and adults standing in front of them, giving them this information. Which they're going to take or leave, but then they're going to go to their peers. They're going to get on social media and be influenced immensely by factors like that. Is there anything in this curriculum that does anything to increase so they listen to us more than their peers, or that we address social media, what's happening on social media or something like that?
So I believe in and correctly, if I'm wrong, Matt, but I believe in the healthy relationships unit. There is a piece on using social media appropriately. Is that correct? Yeah.
We actually started that in the Alliance. So that's a big topic that they did is how do you exercise? And it's same thing under that quite a bit as well. Like, did you get that person to be able to get
I guess it's an age-old question. They listen to their peers rather than their parents or their
Absolutely.
adults. So
Yeah, and
it's still an issue.
and how much control we have over that. We know peer influence is a powerful thing in a teenager's life, and that device that they hold in their hand makes it even more powerful because it's 24 hours a day, right? Which goes to another topic of conversation tonight.
Yes.
I didn't have questions so much as comments. I really appreciate this. I definitely, a couple years ago, was pushing David pretty hard just for a more comprehensive program, something that addressed a lot of my concerns. So I really appreciate all the work you guys put in. I think, like you said, I would argue that this is one of the most important classes that they will take. And I definitely like looking at the nutritional and physical activity. One of my big concerns was just around disordered eating and body image and calorie counting and things like that. And it's just a constant concern with kids, especially with social media. And even just yesterday, my daughter came up again and said another friend is counting calories and looking for an app to track her calories to lose weight. And so I really appreciate hearing you say that and focusing on this fuel, disordered eating, managing weight in healthy ways, because I think that's one of the biggest things our girls are facing. Probably our boys on some level too.
Absolutely. And, Mandy, I think it's one of those things too where right?
And that's the key part about Haley and I's job is we get to
it's like that. It, girls and boys, it is a huge issue. I see it a lot with the athletes. The boys are trying to, like, I need to be at this weight in order to do this. So I'm just starving myself. Like, no, like, that's not the way you do. Like, I'll help you. Or yeah, or on a bulk. And so, yeah, and it is an issue. And there's only so many minutes in a day that we can try to cover everything. But some of those kids that we need to talk to is what Haley and I do a really good job of trying to bring in. And like, if I can't do it, then Haley can try to influence them.
Yeah, that's great. And then the other big thing that we'd already touched on was the consent. And one thing I specifically want to call out is, like, I know that when Jordan had come before, my daughter was in the class with her freshman year, and it was the best talk. Like, learning about the red flags and relationships was so good. And I had brought up to David that I just want to make sure that we're really crossing all age groups where it's like peer-to-peer consent, but also kid to adult, and making sure that we very clearly tell kids that you do not have to listen to adults who are telling you something that you know is wrong. Because I feel like sometimes in our culture there's so much perspective already. Listen to your teacher. You need to call out. So is that in the consent curriculum part too, of like, if adults are telling you to do something that you know is wrong, you tell another child?
The did bring that up today, how to be able to tell that difference. And if you don't feel comfortable giving that answer, then find another trusted adult and run it by them and see what they have to say.
Okay.
So we're getting there.
Okay, perfect. Those were two of my big things that I'm glad to see.
And with the topic that you were just talking about, Mandy, are coaches kind of on the same page as what you're teaching? Are they informed of what? So it's kind of all around the athletic world?
No.
Sorry? Yeah. Just bulking up, losing weight, not the consent, the nutrition piece, yeah.
I think coaches are like, hey, you need to watch this kid or whatever. But out of building, it's always
And in some sports.
Yeah.
Right.
There's nutrition conversation. Being very closely connected with wrestlers, for example.
right.
Those conversations.
Those wrestling kids.
And I
you
get,
know.
wrestling's so different.
And it's, are they doing it healthy, and what can they do to get where they need to be, but they're willing to come have that conversation, which is good. They're not just trying to do it on their own.
Well, I think further down is activities, and Marco's here too, but I think that's a great point. Like, we've talked a lot more about more comprehensive coach education, and I definitely think this is a huge topic for coaches to
Not
understand.
only nutrition, but relationships.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just bring it into the normal conversation. Just keep talking about it.
Obviously, like, a lot of maturities needed for some of these content. Is this more geared for junior, senior level? Or do we?
This is freshman. Yep. Yeah. So I think a couple of years ago, we'd have liked it to have been a senior conversation, but it just didn't work. Freshmen just seemed like it was better to get them right then and there.
And I would argue
Yeah.
freshman year is when they start, we need to have conversations about these topics with kids.
This is really a culmination of your SEL thing. Social, how do I build healthy relationships with people around me, and that internal emotional regulation, how do I manage mental health, all those things on the inside, those conversations with yourselves, this class driven, it's perfect at that freshman, sophomore development stage. It's the questions that they're struggling with right then. If you wait till the senior year, you just step to the development moment. Normally we get some sort of collective ignorance with kids, talking to kids without an outside influence from physicians and knowledge.
When I looked at the curriculum, I did like it. And one of the things I liked about it is so many times abstinence was mentioned. And that, in my mind, goes right along with consent. It's like knowing what your options are in making a decision on it. And sometimes the decision is no. So I like that. The second kind of unrelated thing is how how are the parents going to be notified where the curriculum is to be evaluated? Are you just going to be a big email for everybody to link to that?
I'll put it in my weekly.
I'll put it in my weekly email and let them know. I think the health adoption has already been in my weekly email, or maybe it's my board report, right? Where people have access to that board report, but I'll definitely put it in weekly emails to advertise our health curriculums up for adoption, and you're open to provide feedback and review it.
Then our intent would be set it out there for 60 days, see what kind of feedback we might get. If that changes or we need to update our recommendation, the team can look at that input, bring that back to you guys in February. The reason is it closed on February 5th, so that you turn around and put it in your February board meeting. That's your official vote. This curriculum is one of the things you vote on. So hopefully it gives a full enough process.
Are we just looking for high school current parent feedback? So your email is the source, or are we looking for something more community minded? So maybe like a district?
Do you have a recommendation?
Not necessarily. I just was wondering if we're just looking for that small group.
I think that'd be something to be, I think that's a question you guys should really speak into rather than this aspect. We'll definitely know we want to go to the high school current. It seems like a direct input cycle, but if we want to seek really broad array of conversations on this, and this is something you want to make a focus to your guys' work, and I could easily do that.
I mean, I think in general, when we put stuff out there for community feedback, the general situation is we don't get a lot. This might be different, but also I know plenty of people who say, how do you know all this stuff about the high school? And I say, I read Jesse's email. And they say, oh, I guess I should read that. So part of me feels like sending it out to the broader community might it would give more feedback, but I still don't think it would be a lot of feedback.
Or maybe just like a post on the district's Facebook page that we have this.
Well, I don't think
up.
we
I don't know how it's
I do
people.
think.
I'm not saying put it on a public page.
We don't want to put comp sex ed on.
I would think the next, like, to me, once this is adopted, running in the high school, how do we start to trickle it down to a lot of these things?
That's a good question. So once you get this set, kind of curricular-wise, so I was talking to Ms. Saga about today was, here's this position paper, here's the curriculum, because that allows us to look at the life skills training that is the health curriculum in middle school and review that and see if it really has that scaffolding and building on it. And with this set, it allows us to have a structure of 12 to 18 months it takes to go through that process. Yeah, so we continue to, push those issues down in our society as part of the truth, with the social media and the conversation. I just want to be clear on this, so we will definitely be using the option of working at the high school community for feedback, and you guys would like to look at a broader sense of feedback. Or that is sufficient, just that recommendation, you want to increase it.
I mean, I would say just within the school district, probably. Like, I don't think we need to put it in the newspaper, put it on Facebook. People who are at Longfellow have kids going to high school. I think it's fair to keep it in the school community.
No, I was definitely not
I think
implying that.
Jesse's email as well as some sort
A little
of district-wide
Yeah.
communication.
And people are responsible if they choose to not read emails from the district and be uninformed, then they don't get to give it.
That's helpful, and you can look whether it's in the annual report, putting a link in there. Maybe it's mentioned that, or maybe it's just an email I sent the holidays. So it's a break that I might put it in the email as well. So I'll include that. It's helpful.
Okay. anything else on health curriculum?
Last thing to say about the ETR curriculum. There's no subjectivity in it. It's very language that is used throughout the curriculum.
especially with sexual education, with sexuality and gender, which is something that I really like. It's not, for lack of a better term, explosive language.
Yeah. It's a conversation. That's really the best conversation with all the other kids or all the other adults outside of the district goals that have to do with the conversations. A lot of these things. Right here, coaches, things like that. So yeah,
Do we have any statistics on like teenage pregnancies in school?
It's fairly low, and you know, I want to be careful there because it'd be almost identifiable information, but it's very low.
Just talking numbers.
Yeah, you're talking 1 or 2 cases a year, district-wide. It's in that space. Carry a term, probably other incidences where families have chosen to have pregnancy, but it isn't something that we necessarily participate in. Conversations we have nationwide, that number continues to drop as we continue to see dating decline in this current generation. And we also see a decline in sexual activity in this current generation. There's statistics that are quite alarming, but it's a change in the current generation.
Has it dropped over the time you've been superintendent?
So the 13 years I've been here, it's about the same. You know, maybe it's 3 or 4 on some years where we have people who are supporting pregnancies, but it hasn't been a drastic change. Definitely, it's not increased. And I just have one other thing. Is there a board member who would like to help me edit any of that health curriculum position paper before we might put it out for a comment? Do you have any? Does anyone else? There's 2, obviously. After that, and then it'll come back to you in February, and that'll be when you vote. That gives it a chance for you to come back with some public feedback and some public process.
shifting. Thank you. Shifting to the next topic, cell phone and social media. Everyone who's taking this one.
I'll start. Also gave you guys a position paper on that. I don't think we don't need to put up the next PowerPoint. I think it's very clear. The board has said they wanted to look at this issue, and it's time to kind of do that. The staff has had a chance to look at things. You have teams like the middle school that's been reading and doing a book study, The Anxious Generation. Public Health's running a book study for the community on that same book, The Anxious Generation. I think they just had to finally cap the participation at 70 because it's been so well attended by the community. There's so much interest. We've had lots and lots of letters. We go back to August from community members who have a strong interest in you guys considering this. And of course, the Surgeon General's come out with strong statements about social media and its negative impact again on social or human development. So what you have is your first draft policy. You've got the research from the Department of Ed, from pretty much everybody. There's nobody who's saying social media for a developing human is a good thing. There is no evidence anywhere that this is going to help human beings in developmental stages. So we'll start from there and see where you guys want to go. But we've got an initial policy that would kind of give kids their childhood back and take the phones at least 32 hours a week out of their hands. We'll see what happens on the other times.
I mean, I have a lot of opinions on this, obviously, and I'm sure anyone who works with my students know that they are abusers as much as anyone else. So I'm not coming from a point of my kids are great at this. It was really helpful at CASB to have an opportunity to engage with other districts who have already gone down this road. And it seems like what teachers really want is to know that it's not on them, that they have backup. That if they see a phone, They can take the phone, they can give it to someone else, and they're done. They don't have to engage more, they don't have to keep track. It's at the office. Some adult in their life will have to come get the phone or they're not going to see it again, period. It's over. I don't know if you guys are down with that. I'm pretty down with that. One concern I also have that is not so much a cell phone ban, it's students being allowed to use cell phones. Students using cell phones with permission during class, which I'm hearing from many parents is happening. So maybe all of our kids are lying. I don't know. But many parents have a concern that in a 90-minute class, maybe they took a test and then there's 45 minutes left and you can do whatever you want in some classes, which for many kids will be looking at their phone. I don't expect kids to have to be the only one not on the phone or decide to study or read a book instead. So I would love if that is something that could maybe change my choice right now. But yeah, I'll stop in case anyone else would like to speak. But
I mean, just kind of piggybacking on the school board conference, a few of us went to that session, and Jeffco, Summit, and Aspen were the panelists, and Summit and Aspen have gone with a full ban this year district-wide, and Jeffco, being a huge district, is sort of piloting different options at their different schools and seeing what works. And I think it was the Aspen superintendent who said, we did a big community process. We did kid surveys, we did parent surveys, we did staff surveys, we did community book studies. And he was like, and basically, I'm glad we did all of that, but I would just say, ban them now. It's completely worth it. Like, life has returned to our schools. So yeah, he was like, we have noise in the hallways, we have kids interacting, and then the Summit superintendent, they have a really high percentage of Spanish-speaking kids. And he had mentioned that generally there's a really big cultural divide in their schools, and that he saw a lot of that broken down by having kids at lunch interact with each other. So they were all definitely proponents of it has to be an 8 to 4 ban. Like, it can't be just in class that you turn it into the teacher at the beginning of class. And Summit also, like in their lunchrooms, got ping pong tables and life-size Jenga and board games and all sorts of things to make lunch more enticing for kids to interact with each other. So I think it was encouraging to see 2 districts. The other big point is all of them said they've had almost zero community pushback, that parents across the board have been really excited about this change.
And they also said that after the first week, there's almost no enforcement because it's not happening, right? Like once, and I don't even, we're still working on our policy. In my opinion, personal opinion, it's just you see it, it's gone, a parent picks it up. There's no need to keep track or have a spreadsheet or count these down.
And that's what Aspen is doing.
Yeah, it's gone. And then an adult picks it up. And then I guess if you do that every day, you guys will figure out what the next steps are. But just to make it easier, not more labor intense for teachers, right? And anyone could just be in the hall, see the phone, and take it away.
And I think too, yes, the thing that hit me the most was they said, we have noise again. And I was like, wow, that just hit me really hard. But there was noise in the hallways, noise in the lunchroom. And I would be a proponent of all day long. Yes, not, so they are interacting with others. And Mandy mentioned that some schools turned it in, in little, some have the electronic locks, but the more people we talked to, they were fine with just putting it in the backpack. That I think would pacify parents with the worry of if there was any kind of emergency in the classroom, if there was a lockdown for the day, the students would still have their phones in their backpacks. They could pull them out at that point, text their parents, but we also heard multiple times that you don't want your children on their phones if there is an emergency, if there's a shooter or something like that. They need to listen to the adult in the room. They need to not be on their phones, but they are in their backpacks if they, have to have them. So, but those are all the details you have to figure out. Where do the phones go? But it was pretty clear too that nope, if there's an infraction, the parent or an adult has to come get it, which we were saying as parents, that's all it would take was 1 time or 2 times. And that would be enough to deter maybe the student from pulling it out at all. We heard stories of burner phones if people were using phones as their attendants. So that would get rid of that problem. The safety issue came up too, that in Aspen, that the teachers are all trained, they all have phones. So if the parent is worried about that, the teachers have their phones and are trained. And if the kid needs to talk to their parents, just like the good old days, they go to the office and make those calls. But I think those were just some of the hot topics. But yeah, but it really wasn't a big issue.
It was nice to have Jeffco there because they obviously do have some generational trauma with violence in their schools, and it was really nice to hear their superintendent and a school board member say that what they are getting from the community is please do this. Right? They feel comfortable with it. I like the idea of them being in the backpack or somewhere, because that was one of my concerns as a parent, that if something were happening, I would like to be able to reach my child, but also the odds of that happening, are not a super high percentage, and I would trade that one moment of being able to text for my kid not looking at their phone from 8 to 4 Monday to Thursday. And I think also it's not really my business what a student does in the evening or on the weekend. Can't control that. It's not my area of interest, but just 8 to 4. Monday to Thursday is really where I would like to see that.
Yeah, I mean, from watching some reactions, it seems like we could not move fast enough in this. And just, I mean, I don't know where the process with policy and how we kind of set it out and the time frame. I'm sure our existing policies address this to some manner, but maybe not to the extent that we're talking about now and how we would want to do it. But to me, it just makes a lot of sense to start to probably strictly enforce our existing policies and kind of just expedite this, because it's not very much of a discussion from this board's perspective. And then, with the other component that's there is that we have to make sure our staff is also following these guidelines and that they're not encouraging use for anything or on their own personal devices throughout the day, which I don't know how to manage that. I'm paid to do so. But it just seems like we're all pretty much aligned. Not sure what some of the nuances will be, but if we need to effectively work this way to start the next school year, I would imagine that if you polled the rest of us tonight, we would say 6-0 since Jenny's not here, but I'll counter for 7-0. Just do this 8-4 ban and move on.
So, I guess there's a question of timing to some extent. I wonder if we should move faster. I don't know why, obviously waiting to the beginning of the school year sort of makes some logical sense, but it's really doesn't seem that hard to implement. Put your phone away. We take, you see it, we take it. And if you're looking at it from, trying to prevent the harm that we all know results from, it's like, why are we waiting? Let's just do it. So I certainly would be an advocate of sooner rather than later. I don't see what we gain by waiting till next year, other than it's sort of a logical starting point. But in terms of if you're looking at it from a child perspective, and I would say we do it as soon as possible.
I can definitely agree with that. I could agree with either way, because what I wouldn't want are any half measures taken before it's fully installed. And if we can fully install it after Christmas, then that's great. But what I wonder, would it be appropriate to do a high school ban first? Because taking smartwatches and stuff away from second graders, that might be hard to do for some parents without enough preparation and being able to talk to their kids and their families and all that stuff. I wonder if we would just focus on high school for this year, if we did anything this year.
And just for myself, I'm not looking at watches. I was only looking at phones, but I don't know if we're talking more about social media. But I'm not in the classroom, so our kids watch the whole time, or
I was reading
classroom teacher, never lets me know that I don't.
Yeah. That's my bigger concern.
That's
Yeah.
structure, right?
I feel like that's more management than I would be interested in forcing on our teachers to like.
I think if I'm listening on this discussion is really I should be looking not January. I think we have a listening session for community to come in and talk about this topic with you guys. So that's already set up. That's your January, which with the holiday break, that happens pretty fast after winter break. But I could bring that first reading of the policy to January, which accelerates it 1 month faster. And then I can work with administrators to say, here's your quickest timeline that they feel like they can be successful at without half measures. And they can look at some of the unintentional and make sure we're trying to look for the unintended consequence. Maybe that's after spring break might be the fastest we can move and get that, because that would be a January, February 2nd reading, March 3rd reading. That would be spring break. Maybe it's after spring break we can do a really fast rollout. But I hear everyone, if I'm listening right, saying, show me fast and tell me if you can do fast, but I don't hear anyone saying slow down.
Well, I have a little bit of concern. I mean, I agree with Matt. Like, yeah, if we could take away the phones right now, then great, I could do it. But I do think, like Ben was saying, the half measures, I think if we don't do it thoughtfully and we don't have all of our teachers and staff on board, then it won't work. Because, like, as the Aspen guy was saying, the most important measure was that very first week of school. They had 15 infractions. Phones were immediately taken. Parents were called. And I think he said the next week they had 2. And then it just progressively, like, now is not really an issue. So I do know, as Jen was saying earlier, there are a lot of teachers who are using phones in the classroom, who are playing Kahoot on the phone. Even, like, today, like, we applied for student council and got the text on her Instagram about her interview. And she was like, oh, Mom, if I hadn't seen that, they vote for royalty on their Instagram account at home. They scan the QR codes to do anything related to Stuco. So I do feel like there's a lot of things to sort out, but if we don't sort out well, will just not work. So I guess my concern with rolling fast, and like you're saying, we still have 3 readings, right? We're not going to make this an emergent policy. That would not be, in my opinion, a choice. So if we're waiting till March, then part of me wonders if just waiting until the next school year would be better. I mean, if administration thinks that we can really roll out all of that, like, you know, and then in addition to going to cell phone seminars, most of us spent the rest of our time at AI seminars, right? And so it's like another big thing where my kids tell me, like, oh, well, I Google on my phone when I'm researching for a paper because the Chromebook is too slow, or the Chromebook doesn't work, or whatever. So I think that's another component that we have to work out, is we do have to make sure that our technology is in place so that kids can access whatever they need to access to be effective in school on their Chromebooks without feeling like they need their phones. So those would be some of my concerns with a quick rollout. And even talking to Michelle yesterday, like, she mentioned she wants the little pocket pins, which would require a grant, like if the middle school chooses to go that route. So I don't know. I mean, I would rather take time and do it well than try to fast track it and we do it
And I think we do need to be mindful about things like whatever that was happening. I don't know what that was on the Instagram or whatever. Like, we do need to be mindful that not all kids have Instagram. We do need to be mindful that not all kids have phones. So if you're unable to teach your class without some kids using their phones because the technology we're providing is not good enough, you're gonna have to find a different way to teach it. Period. It's not fair that my kid has a phone and your kid doesn't, so my kid has some advantage in the classroom. I don't really enjoy hearing that argument.
And I think to clarify maybe the end goal, because with the smartwatch conversation, you can text on smartwatches, right? So, but you can, I mean, in my mind, it's like if they have this addiction anyway, and they still have that available. I mean, again, just something to discuss and define maybe what closer what we're.
So I think what I'll do is January, I'll bring you your first reading. You have a community listening session. League of Women Voters is offering that. See if we can get some other people to engage you on the topic. We can listen. I'll bring an 8 to 4 ban on the phones, but I think it's important. It's about giving the kids their childhood back. It's about human development. It's not about banning phones. It's about giving back things like boredom, because inside of boredom, which sounds horrible, but that's where creativity, that's where relationships are formed, that's where people learn to get out of their shells. It's a lot about giving kids their childhood back and their developmental opportunities. We'll do that in January. Be my strategy then. Listen to you guys tonight. That'll be your first reading. Also, let us hear. Then in February, we're going to have that second reading. Make sure we're looking at some of the improvements in the policy, plus any other policies that might have to be addressed from the staff side or the student side. And at that time, I think my administrators can say, we recommend starting here, like next school year. Would be my guess is probably option A. But we'll also develop, if you want to say we want it done as fast as possible, here's how we could do option B and fast track it and kind of give the pros and cons and see if we can give you guys some recommendations. And that could come in with second reading, which feels appropriate. And then if it's still rolling fine, we'll finish that conversation up in March. If not, obviously, then we have a month or two to extend that conversation, look deeper, and study more. That would be my strategy if that works for your guys' intentions.
I mean, one thing with the first reading coming in January is I would like to know from the administrators at each school, one, what they're already doing. Like, I don't even know if this is a thing for Corey, or if already phones and stuff are in the backpacks and it's not an issue, right? And then we know, like, okay, Corey can just keep rolling with that plan. He's already following the policy we're looking to make. So that would be helpful for me if in January we get some feedback from each administrator on what you're already doing, what you think would work. And yeah, for sure at high school it's going to be the biggest, because I do think certain things like how you do Stuco and all of the student engagement. And obviously they can be on Instagram after school, but like Jen said, they don't all have it. So I do think even in general, thinking about how some of that would happen without phones and without social media. Because I think to do a first reading, it feels not very informed to not already know what our administrators are doing and what you guys would recommend as like pockets, backpacks, like those kinds of watches, no watches, like those kinds of things, which I assume you'll get that feedback as you make the first draft. But I'm asking specifically that you do get.
Yeah, I would say what exactly does my because I don't want to go half on it, but enforcing the existing policies or for a reason. Assuming to some extent bridge school food. Okay, any other comments up on social media? Sure.
My only critical recommendation is to go forward and to ban the phones. There's no equivocation on what my recommendation is. The superintendent is going to say.
So we actually do have a really, like our student use of cell phones. The first sentence says, the Board of Education believes personal technology devices may be useful tools for students in the educational environment and can play a vital communication role during emergency situations. So we also are going to need to potentially get rid of all of the current policies. So enforcing what we currently have, our policy actually says that they can be useful tools. CJ. Is there a CJ too?
And then again, that's why I'll be working next semester on auditing all of the J policies, including the I policy, go through the last two. And I think this is why these are the kind of conversations they all intersect with.
Okay. Ready to jump into the next one, or need a quick break? Silence means we're jumping. Okay. activities position paper. Well, Marco here. I don't know if Marco's starting this one off. David, if you're to keep going with the intro piece to this.
I'll keep going with intro. Back when we were in September, the board asked for some things like to look at some policy activities. And so we've looked at those things. What I really found is difficult to put a comprehensive frame around what some of the things we're trying to talk about. I'll give you an example. In our district, there's a protocol that we do not cut. Meaning if there's 50 kids that show up to basketball, we try and get all 50 kids. We don't say we're only taking this many. It's not actually published anywhere in that philosophy, right? So it's never actually been articulated by the board. And as I dug deeper, I think that's one of the places to start. Why do we support activities? What is our belief and our justification? And then into some of the policies. There's definitely a lot of J policies. I started to add into that position paper and went, this is why we're going to audit the J policies, because there's a lot that interacts with this. Marco helped me identify that in some spaces we have the activities code of conduct, but not easily accessible elsewhere. So, okay, there's more learning and growth. Obviously, we've got some regulations that would just be kind of administrative, like, okay, acknowledging the board. But I felt like pause and look at some of the bigger picture stuff is important, and then you can see how this regulations would make it happen. Excuse me. So that's just a start. I think maybe, I don't know if Mark or Jesse want to jump in, but it might be the board just wants to jump in and say, I had a chance to look at this. I appreciate the direction we're going. I have some firm opinions, of that nature. I don't know if Jesse or Mark, you want to add?
I can certainly add.
I don't understand a sentence. The on the overview, you've got 3 paragraphs. The last paragraph, the district does not seek to cut from teams. Got that. However, in some cases, it will be allowed and may drive the justification for additional activities to be added.
Mm-hmm. So we've never articulated it, so I just put it on a draft. That's why that sentence is highlighted. Because the board, the comment on that, if you could pull it up on Google Drive, says the board needs to talk about this. There are many teams right now at the high school. We probably have too many players. Girls volleyball hits this, and it's not infrequent. Definitely this year than other years. There's more athletes than there's coaches. Most importantly, than there's matches. We can't find the competitions for them to participate in. Okay, so if you cut, let's say you cut it down to 2 teams of varsity
No,
and JV.
we don't believe in cutting.
Well, I think we have to talk about that because I don't know that that's true anymore.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know that we're doing right by all of those girls by saying, hey, come participate in volleyball and don't ever get to compete. Because you never get to the development stage because maybe you joined last minute, see who's not that spaces. So then perhaps that is one of the reasons why we would add new activities.
So not add another slot of volleyball, add a whole new activity, or either or?
Either or.
Okay.
Here's the so like there's a lot of teams that don't have
Oh, thank you.
there's a lot of volleyball team or schools that doesn't have a C team volleyball level. So already just scheduling that school for the varsity level, that's one less opportunity for those C team girls. Well, I have done some creative things like scheduled like off nights and gotten extra games, but we're still kind of limited on when availability of facilities, availability of coaches, and still them managing to get other growth practices and things like that. But a unique thing with volleyball is one, you're limited on how many substitutions you can do in a set. You're also limited on once a sub happens, who can sub in for that person. So unlike basketball, for example, every time there's a stoppage, I could send in 5 new kids, and so that's not a big deal. But volleyball in particular, you're limited on how many subs you can do and who can sub in. And so even creating those extra opportunities, there's still this diminishing of returns when you have a large number. You know, we've been able to schedule, like example, BV extra nights. Hey, can we play your C team over there? Can you bring your C team over here? Completely separate from league night. Another, you know, reaching out to like Cotopaxi or someone like that who they might, because they're 1A, they might be in a league where a school only has varsity, so their JV is needing extra games. So we've done a lot of extra things to create opportunities, but even then, we still have a certain amount of games we could schedule for each level by chess or rules.
It's a good problem to have.
Correct.
I mean,
It's an amazing problem, but I think this is why I brought it to the board, because then you'll see GBCV. That policy had a first reading tonight. That's your stipend policy. It's the only place where there's any articulation of how to add additional chassis sports or how to add additional local activities that may not be chassis controlled, but we want to have a club, we want to have more drama, we want to have, you know, any kind of activity. It's the only policy that's articulated because I don't know, 10, 12 years ago it wasn't articulated at all, so we put it in that policy. That's why you see on this position paper really a recommendation to start to make some regulation on the administrative side that articulate how do you evaluate a program, right? Because you have, if you're going to say you're adding programs, you also have the ability to sunset programs based on what criteria. I really think the board needs to have some initial guidance on what are those values of when would you sunset an activity, right? When would you add another activity that makes, and the how you would do it. I think that's why we kind of started to step back and actually make a more robust picture of a philosophy of managing activities, both sports and kind of larger club situations and performing arts. So,
on that topic, can I ask another question? Sorry. CHASA, the stipends, are they budget now? Are they higher than, are the stipends that we pay for CHASA activities higher than clubs, or is it?
No, not necessarily. So if you're talking about drama, and it depends what your categories are.
Yeah.
There's a whole different set. So like golf doesn't pay the same as basketball, right? And there's a whole criteria: how many matches, how long is their season, how many players, how many coaches do they have to manage? Right?
And does CHASA fund any of that? Do they kick in anything?
No, they're a regulatory
Ask.
organization.
So we actually fund chess.
Oh, okay, there we go.
But I think it's good, important. I got a soccer coach over here who's quiet. I'm sure he's got lots of thoughts. But when do you add another assistant? So volleyball, we were talking about that one. It's a great example. Is it a 1-to-10 ratio? Like what's the? And then you talk about cross country, right? Because we bring up that they run miles all over the county. What's the supervisionary model? Like when you think about it, there's a lot of liabilities in these different spaces, and those things aren't articulated anywhere. Not that anything is going bad, but I think if we're going to take the time, it's a good time to articulate that. Because if it's a chassis sport or if it's, say, plays, what's that ratio where you need to have this many adults? And that's an important part of adding another activity. We're a small town. There's two parts to that. There's only so many participants. So if you make 27 options, right, that's great. You get lots of people participating, but nobody will win. So I'm not sure how many adolescents that's fun. So winning is part of it, but that's not part of the evaluation. Right? I think that there's a lot of struggle in that spot. And then you've also got to think about volunteerism is not high. There's a few people doing most of the labor. I think that's always been true in organizations and society. But if you keep adding more and more activities and saying you have to have these ratios of students or athletes or participants to adults, are there enough adults? And then you have to look at your facilities to say, are you going to keep adding fields? Are you going to take on that responsibility? There's also that mixture. That's why a lot of this, I think, does start with the board.
Yeah, it's difficult cutting aside because it's a correlation between just the childhood experience of the education of the participating in activities and athletics, kind of setting record-setting numbers every year, it seems, the last several years. Yeah. But like, it's an interesting perspective. The B team volleyball player, do they think that they're going to play? Do they know that they're kind of the practice squad person? Like, on the college level of like, you're pretty much redshirted, just here to learn and you're here to practice, but don't anticipate not playing because we're not going to be able to do that. And then on the flip side of how many girls are out there in volleyball, and is it fair to our varsity team and the coaches to try to manage all of those other ones that are there? So to me, it's not a simple solution by any means, but like adding more well thought out activities to try to just provide more opportunity. But I think that it's still a challenge. I mean, it's just like cutting kids and you would hope they would land somewhere else, but I do think that would become difficult, and then if it does tie into kind of the staffing pay and the expectations of coaches and the level of staffing, to me, finding more activities that they can be involved in that are pretty strategic and pretty well thought out through the board or kind of public probably the way I would lean, because I just feel like I would assume that there's going to be X number of volleyball girls that realize they're on C or D team and they take up stock dollars that whatever other program that would fall in that season.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I assume there's some coach communication at the start of the season on what it will look like for kids, and my biggest concern would be what does fill that gap when a kid gets cut and feels like they're not good enough to play. And I'm not trying to go for some everyone gets a trophy situation here. However, that is the benefits we know of being involved in anything are huge. And I really personally just hate the idea of someone thought they had something set up with some friends or not friends 3 days a week after school, and now what have they got? So it's a concern of mine for sure, and I appreciate all your creative measures to get moving.
Well, and then there is the development piece too, right? Where, yeah, not every kid that gets cut is going to go on to be your varsity player down the road, but there is a benefit to having D team, C team, for our bigger sports, probably like basketball, volleyball, soccer, football, where really those kids do have the opportunity to be developing, and even if and it would be interesting to ask those coaches and kids, like, would you, like you were saying, would you prefer to be D team and you only scrimmage each other, and you're never going to play another school all season, but you're going to have the chance to be getting better at volleyball, and maybe by senior year you'll be on the varsity team. So I think there's that component too.
Yeah, I think the social component of being young, your engagement with the camaraderie piece and social development. This is for athletics and activities, just having kids in various different things. It's amazing to see the friendships and development that happens throughout the course of whatever they're doing. So, yeah, our this is it's simple.
This is middle school as well.
Middle school as well, and managing that we have the ability to do these creative things. Sometimes that number issues there.
Just kind of going along with what you're saying, one of my favorite things is like reading like senior questionnaires for senior night. And I always tell people this, like, more often than not, very few will actually say something about the game. It was always like that time on the bus where we were like chatting after the game, or like it never was at the actual game. I remember a couple of years ago, one of the football kids, it was the Madden tournament at Coach Lett's house. Once again, it was about the kids interacting with each other, not the game. Every once in a while, you'll get those and their favorite memories. And so, for me, I want to lean towards not cutting, or I want to make sure we don't cut anyone, but I also want to make sure we have more opportunities available to make sure everyone gets opportunities.
We always talk about athletics, those activities as well. I'm sure there are other activities. I heard I was way early in time when I heard esports.
Yeah,
Big
that's a new thing.
I'm sure you're catching 10% of the numbers anyway. What other activities?
So esports is a perfect example. A few years ago, I was really kind of interested in seeing what we could do with it. I just never had like a staff member that I could, hey, you want to roll with this. Currently, I do have a teacher in the high school that's kind of his world, the video game world, and there are some unique kids that he has in the. On Thursday club days we have video game club as one of them, and he has some unique kids that I would say they're outside of like the world of athletics, the world of arts, that are really enjoying it and participating. This is an opportunity for them to be active, represent their school, and also have that nugget of, oh, I need to make sure I'm passing my classes so I can remain eligible for that activity. I'm seeing those results right now with cheerleading. We have some wonderful young ladies that have been really stepping up this year that a couple of years ago couldn't go multiple weeks in a row without failing. One young lady today for grade check for the first time, she didn't have a D or an F on the report. So once again, just creating those opportunities for kids to be engaged in something that will allow for them to be motivated to succeed beyond, okay, I'm here at school.
Yeah,
The special needs.
Yeah, it's not the easy either. It's presents its own challenges, but that
So let me try and put words to it so it's not vague. Push this into, we got to say it's more concrete. Do you want us to look, I'm going to recommend the middle school because of the developmental stage they're in. It should not have any cutting because the most important thing is those social interactions on the team and you're exploring different identities at that developmental stage. Is there anybody who wants us to develop policies that do have cutting? Limit that. Anybody in the middle school? I'm going to just try and walk us through really black and white.
I do not believe we should have cutting at the middle school. However, we already sort of do by having to cut sixth graders because we don't have enough coaches.
Well, not enough coaching, not enough.
Competition.
No, like the floor space. Like,
Okay.
yeah, we have a.
So you think it's more the floor space than coaching?
Yeah, go.
You've got 3 programs running for basketball, for example. There's girls and boys, and there's 6 programs. Where in the world do they practice? You can't have middle school kids coming back at 9 o'clock at night to practice, and that's not even an exaggeration. So it becomes a floor space thing because they're still competing with space at the high school. I personally don't think you should cut middle school kids either, but it's a fine balance between floor space, finding coaches, and they did a nice job of talking about finding games because there's nothing worse than practicing every day and practice all day, all season. We had 3 games. So I think there's a balance there. I think it can be met, but just looking at a clock, if you've got an hour and a half practice for each team, and you start at 4, your last team's not starting till 7, 8 at night.
On that question, it might sound obvious, but since they're in the same district, could middle school kids use the elementary school? Jim?
I don't know why they couldn't, Dr. Hill. I mean, I think that's a great suggestion. I'm not saying they never have. It's a little bit of a different setup. We'd have to kind of look at some things because the gyms aren't identical. And it would
Logistics
still
of
be an
getting
option.
kids over there. We're using the facilities.
Well, and I agree that it's not ideal to practice and then have a competition. But what I would say is I still think if your friends are playing volleyball and you can still 4 days a week go to volleyball practice and be with your friends, I still think there's benefit to that, even if you don't get to play a game. Because we still have kids engaged. We still have kids not sitting at home on their phones. We still have kids practicing a skill to get better. And with basketball, like the girls and boys seasons are different. So that gives a little more flexibility. And I know with volleyball this year, like I had to take my kid back at 5:15 for me, but she was able to play. So I do think if kids have stuff like that, I do think most parents would still rather their kid have something to do after school, even if they have to take them back, and even if they have to switch programs.
Keep pushing this. What do you guys think about cutting at the high school? And this, I'm just asking questions because it drives all the recommendations I have about the rules, policy, regulations, and then the budgetary implications I would come back with.
Can I just say something? I know you said I'm
Please,
pitching
Coach.
to you, and I don't want to overspeak, but I think that there's like 6 questions happening, and I would say that with the position paper, and I've read it, thought about it a lot as we talked about it. I think you have to figure out what the priorities are first before you talk about cutting. Because I think if your main priority is how you evaluate a program, and is the program successful if you have kids, or is the program successful if they're successful in record, or is the program successful, etc., and then is the coach successful because of those things, I think that's going to dictate the cutting policy to me. As a coach, please don't force a cutting policy on me, because I have had to fight to get a program to a point where we have this, and I'll just hustle and find a way to get more games. Like I'll do that because that's what's going to develop kids. So I would say we're looking at it incorrectly from a person who's in it. I would rather know what the philosophy of the board is on what's a successful program, because I think that would then dictate to me, well, then if I need to put my energy into this, and maybe a cut policy makes sense at that point. But to just say, let's start with, does it appropriate to cut somebody when we don't know what we're gauging a successful program on, I think we're putting the cart before the horse there a little bit. Would be my take on it as a coach.
Yes. But there's building blocks from whatever grade level you want to start, whatever, to start of then having a successful program. Living in Salida a long time and seeing the ebbs and flows of numbers. It's like, we got a good class, you're good for this sport for X number of years, and then it's going to come up after that. You see the approach that to where you don't have the huge ebbs and flows of numbers. You may have a bigger senior class or whatever, but I am more in favor of, we're not cutting, but go back to what's really amazing, just like, hey, you're a freshman. There's 30 seniors out there. They can fight for that. Whatever. But, so there are challenges, and you probably practice 7th grade basketball at 7 a.m. because that's what pipes out we got. This is part of it.
It's super helpful, and I know that this is a popular opinion, but losing is pretty awesome for those kids. I think you learn a lot when you're not winning, so that wouldn't be a personal measure for me when you first solutions, but I know that's probably not what you're talking
No, I don't think we should judge our programs based on like winning or losing. Like I think we're missing out on basically everything that's important in life if that's how we're gonna make our metric. Um, because as we always tell our cross country kids, like you control what you can control. You can control your training, your nutrition, all of your habits. You can't control how fast the other kid is, right? And then you learn by failing and you decide what you're gonna do about it. So I would be highly against a strategy that evaluates our programs based on things.
Any other thoughts? I'm trying to dry you out and see if there's any hard lines out there before we try and come back. You'll have that policy GBCB. I did notice when I read it again, I pulled out this stuff that was about how to add other programs. There's also language in there that I didn't pull out, how to add more CHASA programs, which esports would be an example. So I'll probably pull that into that regulation policy of how to add activities and make that a little more robust. Is there anything else in those regulation policies that you guys got a chance to glance at that you're like, hey, this was a really bad criteria you threw on there, or that was great? Any highs or lows when you guys looked at those things?
Well, and I mean, I mentioned this too at CASB. It's like tired of hearing me say this. But I would really like to hear from the kids who aren't participating in anything. Because, yeah, I mean, we threw around the flag football thing, and I think you had a lot of reasons why that made sense. Like, it was easy, no equipment, low cost to start.
Well,
But-
and also I had students come to me about it.
Right. And my opinion on that was it's attracting the same kind of student who's already playing volleyball and basketball and all of the things. So I think cheerleading was an example, and I've been really happy to see the progress this year, that it does seem like the numbers are up. We found a way to make it a lot more engaging with adding in the tumbling and getting them more training. So that's really cool to see. But I really would like to survey and hear from the kids that are doing nothing, because those are likely our kids who are struggling academically, struggling with mental health, struggling with friends. So maybe that is where more we do focus on esports or something like that. So I think that's a survey that would be worth doing sooner rather than later to inform kind of our decision on what we add and where we go next.
Jesse, do you guys have any strategy yet of the next time we would survey and how we would do it, and that'd be different or more comprehensive?
Well, an easy way, one, I can just collect names of kids that are participating compared to the rest of the roster of the school and directly survey those students. Like, hey, what are you into? What would you like to do? What makes you happy? You know, and just kind of find out what that is. Like ideally, I would like to make sure that it stays as like a CHASA activity for and the only reason why is I like the idea of just having that consistent governing body, as opposed to like trying to get into something else that's a completely different governing body.
It's possible that then some of those kids could get involved in something that we already have going, just for whatever reason that happens, and maybe getting that from you or hearing from you that you would like to know what they're into, even though naturally this is already doing.
I mean, if you have the time to do that, Marco, that sounds amazing. Like to go draw those kids out and individually talk to each of them about what they would be interested in.
It'll be
I think-
difficult, but
I mean, that sounds like a lot of time for you, but I think that would certainly be the most effective, cool thing to see what they would say.
yeah, I was about to say, and a lot of them are work.
Well, that helps me. I want to get some firmer edges. Obviously, for one of the things you guys had brought up in September was hiring coaches. What's that regulation? How's that policy? I think that's all in place and ready to roll. I think that there was some more broader things. You guys have started to give voice to some things that were implicit, but we've never made
made explicit. And so I appreciate that. So it gives me some guidance when we come back January, February, bring you back some more regulations and try and keep fleshing out some of these things that haven't been explicitly stated in the district. So I appreciate it.
Okay, like a 5-10-ish stretch break. And Mike's on.
Yeah, and I knew that.
calendar conversation. All right, last discussion item, policy ICICA school year calendar instruction time. We started this conversation a little bit with Casby, but David, let you kind of prep this conversation.
Sure. So I sent to you guys in the board packet, you've got policy ICICA, and there's basically the previous boards have set down some parameters or criteria for building the calendar. You have one more calendar already published. If you want to change that, if we're going to change it, I think there's been some talk of wanting to change some of the parameters, right? So you've got the Thanksgiving break is one of them, going from a 3-day break to a full week break. I know that's of high interest to some people. What do you do with those days? And I think the biggest question I'd recommend you look at is Memorial Day a hard stop, which is part of that policy to name that criteria in building it. If you're not going to move that, then you're going to push earlier into August, whether you want to or not. And we already start fairly early from many people's perspectives. If that's not a big deal to you, then keep that hard stop, right? So those give you 4 variables. There's not as much to play with. Will has built our calendar for 11 or 12 years. He's ran the calendar committee. He can tell you he's played with every variable there is. There's not nearly as many decisions as you want them to be. So we'll start it there and see, are you guys want to change that policy? If you do, then I'll, 1, bring you back a draft of a new policy as per your guidance. 2, I'll go and build new calendars as per that new idea. And we'll start to work it through a process of staff and get some input. You could change next year's calendar. You could leave it the same. You could build 2 years out. I wouldn't want to build less than 2 years. You could probably build 3 years, but a lot of families who are big planners prefer and really appreciate having a calendar built 2 years out. So there's some starting points for your conversation.
I'll jump right in. I have no. I'm indifferent on a full week versus the current schedule for Thanksgiving week. I understand that there's some lack of learning going on to some extent, but I also know that some grade levels, especially the lower ones, are kind of more fun activities. And then I also know that we probably have a handful of students throughout the district that really holidays are not as pleasant for them as for others, and kind of those 2 extra days in school and being able to be provided a free meal is probably important. So somewhat indifferent on that. I understand the perspective of some of the staff and things of that nature, but I am okay with the current piece that's in place. If it were to go to a full week, I am probably more along the lines of, cutting some sick for the time, or as funny as it is with the weather we had, like the abandonment of this 2-day potential snow days, and if you have to use a snow day, you go back to the old school and guess you're coming an extra day to make up for it, type of thing. That was not a popular opinion in my household, but whatever. And then, I think the other piece of my perspective is Memorial Day is not a hard stop to me. I think just looking at kind of the one thing that I don't know, and Marco left, but that's fine, but like starting when we start August already seems to, like, activities are already starting. So it is very early. It's like, oh my goodness, we're already back. But it seems like all the other activities are happening. And if that's the case, like, it makes sense to be back kind of that same time frame anyway. But if those activities are later in the month, and we're able to kind of go beyond Memorial and extend summer on the back end where a little bit more favorable weather and things of that nature, totally fine with me. But coordinating with kind of the athletics and activity schedules and things of that nature makes a lot more sense, because kids are going to have to be back to participate in those to some extent anyway.
I don't personally have a strong opinion about when school starts or ends. Just the feedback I do get about Thanksgiving from students and teachers is that it is not effective or enjoyable. But maybe that's only people I hear from.
being those 2 days during the Thanksgiving week are not effective.
Yeah, that students sort of feel like they're doing busy work, teachers feel like they are babysitting, is the term I've generally heard used. And that really seems to set maybe a tone at the school that the students are picking up on.
Okay.
Well, and I do think at least, I don't know when it was, like a year ago, when we approved that staff package, and then a lot of the comments were just, I think we asked them, is there other things we could do other than money? And I remember talking about it then, like Thanksgiving was a huge thing that just kept coming up over and over again, like as staff, if you could give us those 2 days off. I happened to be at a bunch of Christmas parties and book clubs and random things over the last few days, so I got to talk to a lot of different parents. And across the board, everybody said, give us Thanksgiving week off, and we will go the extra week in June. Let us start later in August because the weather in May is awful. And sometimes it's snowing. We'd rather just be in school, and we'd rather be able to be off school in August when the weather is nice and we can still be outside.
That sounds valid. I didn't do the counting to figure out, the equal days attended before Christmas and after Christmas. Maybe somebody knows that off the top of their head, but
What if the other part is, especially for high school, which is first semester, into January, just don't have enough days. And especially if you start later in August, it pushes it back to, I'm dating myself, on how it used to be, where your semester ended after Christmas.
right. So maybe on the earlier side. I don't personally haven't spoke to anybody that has a strong preference on that, but I think leaving that up to the teachers would be pretty valuable. But I do think that a full week at Thanksgiving would be a great plan, and also considering at least as an option to do make up those 2 days as a Friday in if that doesn't the classified schedules, and it may, so that might be totally out.
Yeah, and I agree. We started this whole conversation because of what the staff wanted, but I would be curious to know if they had a voice, if they felt strongly going into June. I don't think anybody would want to start earlier just from talking to people, but if you threw out some different options. Is there a calendar committee? Well,
Yes.
Is
We
that
have
just
not,
you?
we haven't, we normally meet in the spring,
okay.
but there's 5 or 6 of us.
And
Last
what-
time we published 3 years of calendars, so we've had a chance to kind of breathe from that.
Okay. And do you have a feeling for what they're looking at, or are they happy with the way it is?
I think personally, I think the week off would go a long way. I would not suggest adding those days on Fridays. I just think I got this week off, but now I got 2 other long weeks. That doesn't seem right to me. The real question in my mind is, what does it do if you go 2 weeks into June, or 10 days into June? I would do it more than a couple of days past Memorial Day, because you don't want it to be, it's 3 days past Memorial Day, and then you get some kids or families blowing it off.
Same problem, right?
You want to make it meaningful. I think you'll hear some input on summer employment. I don't know how valid it is or how much meaning that has. If you're talking about what's best for learning, you could certainly balance out your semesters pretty easily as far as having each semester be 75 days on a 150-day schedule. I can ask, but I think it's going to be all over the map. You're going to have some people that August is so hot and they don't want to be back at work, and somebody said May is kind of yucky sometimes and rather go into June. I will take the direction you give me, and we'll make however many options you want.
Because with my super brief counting of weeks, if we started like August 19th and went until June 5th, it would be 17 weeks before Christmas and 21 weeks after Christmas. So it is kind of a big stretch.
It does make that. That's why normally finals at a high school normally get pushed into after the winter break.
Which does that generally, I mean, have we done that? Like, does that go well for and that's not going to work with CMC. Our CMC kids are already ending now, like they're already done. And then I personally, as a parent, wouldn't love to see another additional. Well, I guess they would they would have to start CMC classes in January on top of their other. Like that wouldn't work with CMC at all.
It would get very complicated very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess to me, I have no preferences here. I think a later start would be great, but I do think that there are challenges to that just as much. And we'll probably look to David, Will, other than bringing year-round school, because I know that's like for the educators' dream for
It's best for kids,
best for
community,
kids.
but I'm not sure that's what we're ready for.
So I don't think we're ready for that. So I would be thrilled to take kind of your recommendation on what fits for all the pieces of the puzzle that need to be fit for you.
Tell you what we can do. I hear everybody saying, let's look at a week-long break at Thanksgiving. You guys have flexibility at start and stop times, which is what we need in order to pull it off. We will work on some solutions. We'll bring it back to you and show you some pros and cons. Like, how does this work with CMC? How does this work with not having even semesters? How might this work with staff who have summer jobs from their perception? We'll try and gather some around and we'll get back to you on here's starting with what happens if we took a week at Thanksgiving. How would we solve the unintended consequences of start and stop times? And then what are the pros and cons of those solutions? And we'll bring it back to you, and then you guys can evaluate whether you like that.
Good question.
Yes.
So I assume it's a number of hours the students are in front of teachers
Yes.
a year.
1080 for high secondary students.
And is that where we're minus 2 days for snow days?
We have 2 extra days built into, so call it 16 hours.
So if we take 2 snow days off, 1 more day off would put us below the 1080?
Yes, and then you'd have to
Potentially
make that
would,
up.
and then you'd have to make it up, or if you don't make it up, especially for high school kids, they don't have enough time by the state to say that they've actually done the
So
work.
we don't have more than the 2 days built in?
No, we only
cover
built
the hours.
2 snow days in, so
Well, and honestly, I mean, I'm sort of reevaluating and considering this after looking at this, right? The 17 to 21, that's a whole month. Like looking at that health curriculum, right? You can't have a kid in the fall having a whole month less health than a kid in the spring. And I feel like the CMC is going to be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
So maybe like evaluate that before we even go down this road at all, because it seems like maybe we're still kind of stuck.
we'll start there, and but we'll
And I just don't, now I don't want you to waste a bunch of time if it doesn't work with the partners. I've seen, yeah, right? I mean, I didn't think about that until I looked at this, and a month is a lot of time.
yeah, you can't.
You
As
can't have a month.
somebody trying to offer 2 semester classes,
No
Right.
snow days no matter what.
Let's just do no snow days.
How many snow days have you called?
I have called at least 1 snow day every year that I have been superintendent.
I feel like that's high. I feel like there was a 4 to 5 years we had none.
I have. We could go back and check the historical records.
What about 1 snow day and 5 extra minutes added onto each day?
I mean, you can do that, but the part I would also, I mean, then we'll have to get into the central mission is instructional minutes,
Right.
right? And you have the shortest school year
Right.
by days in America, right? So you're already way outside of a bell curve. So you start taking those away, and you're pushing yourself even farther away from what most people consider necessary to pull off the task. So, but I think we can look at it. We'll start with the CMC piece and splitting it up at the high school level or the secondary classes and see what the implications. And if I can't get anyone to recommend it, then I can come back and say we're really making a strong recommendation to maintain your current calendar policy because, and then we can answer that question. But I think many people in the community would like us to at least make that evaluation, do the due diligence.
You could do the whole week, and then it doesn't solve both. We're trying to solve 3 problems. You're trying to do the whole week of Thanksgiving. You're trying to start later in the year. You're trying to go later into June. You could solve the week of Thanksgiving. You're just going to start earlier in August, and you can still balance things out. Most people don't want to come back the 5th or 6th of August.
That would be
I won't say it's the only way, because when I say it's the only way, someone will argue with me. It is the easiest way, but I'm more than happy to bring back some drafts and some input from the calendar committee. Maybe not we could probably get it done for January.
Probably, if we get done early, we will. Otherwise, February is what I would expect. It's just
We don't have a calendar for 25, 26 school year.
we do have one
We
already
do.
published.
We have 25, 26 already built. It's just like our current year and last year.
No, so you still have a full year out in front. I've heard many people ask us to look into that, so we'll do our due diligence. We'll consider that week off from Thanksgiving, and what are the unintended consequences, and what our possible solutions are to that. We'll bring it back to you guys with a strong recommendation, or if there's really just good options, and we'll say choose what you want. But I think we might end up right where we are, but we'll do our due diligence because I know many people would like us to.
We could try the 5-day school week again.
Try the 5-day
Just
school
two
week.
times, and we'll
Just
just
two
go
times, those
from
long
just two
weeks.
times, September to April. Yeah, I would be curious if teachers would really want Thanksgiving off if they knew they had to add maybe 2 Fridays, because it seems like maybe we don't want to start earlier in August and adjust. And then you're right, then you're looking at a 5-day week, which is going to burn all this out.
I think it'll take the calendar committee a little bit of time to get that question with all the proper specifics in there so that they can ask for perception on that. But we'll tackle it. That gives us something to do. We're bored, right, Will?
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, sir.
If you're a sticky note, it's right here.
Okay. We'll look forward to that, and I'm assuming we'll get February. So, okay. Moving into action items. Thank you, Will. Have a good night. It looks like we have no second reading policies, so looking for a motion to approve Resolution 2024-25-04, committing $180,000 in general fund balance for the remaining balance of PTO buyback payments in June 2026. Thank you. Aaron, you want to make any final comments on this one?
No, I guess just for the public, it's important to understand what we're doing. We put an MOU in place to do the PTO buyback solution when we changed the PTO policy last year and decreased the total accruals, and so we're paying off that over 3 years. And this is just the final. This is the high end of what you could expect that we have to pay next year, depending on how many people take PTO over the next 2 years. But this is the high end, so we're just committing those funds so they're actually set aside for that.
And then, so this is, there's not going to be an additional money, so to speak. It's all 3 years are allocated for now. They will be paid in.
Yeah. I mean, you'll see it next year. You'll see it come off of committed and put into expenditures. But yeah, they'll all be basically you'll be able to see all that money at this point.
Ready for a vote?
Dr. Hill? Did I need to start? Aye, thank you. Mr. Hawks?
Aye.
Mrs. Lumberg? Aye. Mrs. Maxwell? Aye. Ms. Shipman? Aye. And Mr. Schmidt?
Looking for a motion to approve certification of mills?
Yeah, your tax rates.
I thought they were double levels. I was like, what is this?
MILS acronym.
Anyone else got it, so yes. That's all right. There are now on my copy. Okay.
Looking for a
motion.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. Again, Aaron, any comments you want to add?
No, I mean this is basically just legal. We got the assessed values last week after the change in the last House bill, and so we get our final assessments. We plug it into a formula, prints off an Excel sheet that you all have to approve, and then I have to send that back to the counties so that we get the correct amount of money for our bond and our property tax payments. So, but all the work is done, just approving it and moving forward.
We panicked about approving it year end, kind of disbanded and got much. last year, but
Well,
the
so-
timing of things, if this is all.
Yeah, so last year it changed. That's why this is normal. You should expect this at the beginning of December. You should expect it at the beginning of December. Last year, because of the House bill that changed, it was the fake HH or whatever. They gave the counties extra time, and so that pushed us back to where we had extra time, and it fell during Christmas break, so it was a little bit different last year. But this is normal. They're normally due by December 15th, so, to the counties. So you should expect this every year.
Ready for a vote?
All right, Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hotz.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundberg. Aye. Mrs. Pascal. Aye. Ms. Shipman. Aye. And Mr. Smith.
Aye. Okay, looking for a motion to approve amended salary schedules for 24 and 25.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Questions, comments, clarifiers from David or Aaron?
No, this is just looking at our market analysis. We do every other year. And I have about $40,000 inside of the budget that allows me to address those positions that have one individual person in them, that's classified or certified. And so this will take care of all those people who are behind the market analysis, which really sets us up nicely to move into the spring and work on teacher pay more. We did a good job this fall, and I think we can do a good job in the spring again. As we get this done.
So do these salary schedules that were in the board packet, do they already include what we just approved with the tentative agreement?
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that as well. So the certified and classified both show the new steps for classified and certified through the tentative agreement. So that's in there, and then the other changes to any additional salary schedules were what David's talking about.
Make sense?
Ready for vote?
Ready. All right, Mr. Hotz, Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hotz.
Aye.
Mrs. Lundberg. Aye. Mrs. Pascal. Aye. Ms. Shipman. Aye. And Mr. Smith.
Aye. Okay, looking for a motion to approve strategic facility plan.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I know we pushed this one back a month. I think there were a few red line edits. Hopefully you guys were able to get through them all. Didn't say anything too major change in my review, but David, any other comments on that?
No, this is your plan. This doesn't commit you to running a bond or anything else. It says, here's how we're going to try and map it out. And then every year, I think I put it on our board monitoring report that every February would be a season where you go back, because you have October counts, you can look at your everything, gets you set up for your capital projects to say, here's the update to our plan. So I think the community needs that. You also need that for some of your other elements, policies of setting what your capacities are at.
I also think I saw some conversation potentially of using that February for both the strategic facility and like the financial.
Yeah, we talked about the amended budget. We'll let you get through the amended budget again, get you set up to talk to collaborative bargaining team. If there's an update to your guys' strategy, or we do that in the February meeting as well. Just trying to improve our calendar, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that thought process. I don't want it to become overly cumbersome every year, but hopefully it's a pretty streamlined process and making sure.
Yeah, my guess would be a one pager or less each year if we stay on it. I think that really sets up our board and future boards to keep their plans updated so it doesn't just get put on the shelf and gather dust as some of these things can do.
Ready for a vote?
Dr. Hill.
Aye.
Mr. Hotz. Mrs. Lundberg. Aye. Mrs. Pascal. Aye. And Ms. Shipman. Aye. And Mr. Smith.
Okay, moving into board columns and committee reports. Mandy, any updates on those scenes? Simple. That's fine. Facilities. I can only say I did speak to Commissioner Wood about picking up the conversation on the county land in January timeframe. Really nothing was there with what they've been doing, and he was good with that, and yeah, really nothing there. I think CMC, I was told, ordered an appraisal for 9th Street property, and that appraiser was there this week on site or something like that.
And
So
we are hopeful to see a sales contract offer on the quadplex anytime.
beautiful.
Through the Chaffey County
Housing Trust.
Always lots going on, but nothing too major or anything. Nothing earth shattering that we've not discussed in detail. So. Communications. Jen, Matt, Kim.
I'd like to discuss on
What's the timeline of our update? Whatever you want to call it?
Annual
report update.
I'm digging in on it. I hope to have it done by the end of this week. If we haven't done it last week, coming slowly and surely.
And I guess my only other question, comment is like, you know, we invested a lot in a new app, but maybe it's just I'm not seeing it, but like maybe it's just the update, continual updates. Maybe everything else is through there, and I'm just not seeing like updates on the feed type thing. Just not using it that much yet.
So one of the important things on the app to know is when you open it, it automatically drops you into the district. So if at the very top there's a little purple down X, right? You can click that, and then it'll give you a list of all the schools. Longfellow is doing an excellent job right now with updating their newsfeed in there. Live feed. The calendar on all the schools should be pretty accurate and updated. But I'm working with the front offices to help kind of give them capacity to help with that in terms of the live feed stuff. So sometimes a lot of people drop into that district page and don't realize they actually have it there. So then they just pay attention again. So that's super helpful. You can also set, like if you just have one student in one building or whatever, in the settings, you can actually change your default organization to the school that makes most of it. So that's the other thing that might be helpful. So I think that would be a challenge. So learning just know that when you have defaults to drop in the district view, and kids just have more
Good to know.
for like school updates.
And if you have notifications set for your school, then will you still see like anytime you post anything or?
No, and it's one of those I try to be careful with the actual like push notifications that come through to your phone. Like I don't want people to get complacent with it and like, oh, it's just another thing, and then there's actually something really cool going on, but because we notified you 6 times about the big sale, whatever, you know, just stop looking. So trying to find that balance of like something that goes with notification is like, there's a snow day, don't come to school today. But the live feed and the events and the news won't necessarily push through as a notification. That's the other thing to just be aware of. Just on there for snow days, 5 a.m. Just keep waiting for the right condition. But anyways, that might be helpful to just so you know where to find it. So.
Cool. Good to know. Cool. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Now you know.
Jen, I'm just gonna make the assumption you got nothing for Casby.
I mean, I would like to say that asking them to do a panel on cell phones seemed to surprise them, and they did it, and it was pretty well attended. So if there are things you would like to see next year, please let me know next October. Because apparently they can make it happen for us. That's all I have.
Always a good conference. Appreciate all y'all for taking some time to be there, and sorry Jody couldn't make it. So, Ben, anything on DAC?
We have not met recently, so no.
David, policy audit. I heard some conversation of trying to wrap that up next spring.
Yeah, I'm looking to do January and February work on that. And Karen's gonna have a lot of fun going through the J policies with me. There's lots of them. We're gonna have a good time, but it's a January, February project for me in my timeline. I think we're sitting well. Your consent agenda cleared out the rest of the ones today. So we are really well set up. And I would just remind everybody, if you have any thoughts on how you would like us to publish your board policy book, I think just making sure you reach out to Kim or myself. about it, any thoughts you might have about that one. We should continue working with the CASB operation, with ourselves and some operation like Google Drive or look for a third party. That's an important thing because I would like to be able to make sure whatever that cost is, it's in your budget when we build it in May, because then that's obviously going to be a summer project. It's going to be a big lift, I'm assuming, to do that, so that it's ready to go for next school year. So.
Well, I have pretty strong feelings of moving towards board docs. You know, every time I try looking through these documents on Google Drive at every meeting, I'm just lost and constantly looking for stuff. Board docs seems like a good program to deal with the policy sides of things, the communication piece with constituents, and dealing with, you know, the board. It sounds like it'll make Kim's life probably a little bit easier, I'm guessing. I'm sure you'll find something else to fill in the gaps, but in terms of organizing stuff for the board, it sounds like it's well worth the cost.
I see the people nodding their head. Is that?
It'd be nice to access all the work you've done. Thank you. Well, and additionally, the cost is far less significant than usual. And I think we thought it would be after talking to them. And you mentioned too that there's also some money that we're paying CASB. So if we pull that out and then add in $5,000, it's not a significant cost.
Okay.
And I do think the communication piece to the community is pretty big. Like if everybody can sign up and get the agenda sent to them with links to documents that we're talking about, we shouldn't have anyone telling us that the whole time.
Ambitious, maybe.
I like that
I'm just saying we shouldn't. And I will say to them, did you sign up for the email?
That is clear. I will look at further into that company, board doc / community, and if we run into another company that's something similar, we'll start to build that solution for next year. That's clear, I think, from everyone. So thanks.
Yeah, and I think the other component of that you and I discussed a little bit is our board meeting space is a challenge. And some of the challenges of live feed and not seeing presentations and a few other things. So I mean, I don't know where it fits in the priority or what the cost may be to try to have a more formal, improved meeting space because we did not have that much in attendance tonight. And it felt awful.
Okay.
Well, in January, we're excited to know what we discussed.
We'll be at the Crest Island
We'll have all of our
Jimmy Cafeteria.
Hopefully a bunch of retirees in the community.
Topics for future meetings, anything in front of mind? Oh, you're early, guys. Nice job. Calendar of events, January meeting. I'm sure we'll try to do is there much of an agenda review? Or we kind of handle that out?
I think it's best when we come back if somebody would like to sit down with us and just review it.
Yeah.
I'd like that. I always think it's best. The agenda's kind of preset and it's kind of there already. But it's always nice for yourself and a board member to confirm with us if there's nothing popped up over the winter break that you want us to push into that space.
I would ask for 2 people because I don't know. Maybe in bed.
So the way it's set up right now, in conjunction with the neighborhood voters to push them there. Phones is the main topic, but I think they mentioned that a lot of people would just like to connect the board if they just connect with the schools. So we'll see. I think people might take one off at 5 to 6:30. Meeting, that'd be the work session. What would be posted would be listening session around phones and social media and conjunction with legal voters. Then you would go from 6:30 to 7:30. You would have student focus groups, right? So Jesse's got all the students lined up. You'll have freshmen through seniors. last few years, he's been able to round up 25-ish kids to come and speak to you. And so that'll kind of be the next wave. And I don't know if the people who come for the first part might stick around to listen to the kids. It's a really great opportunity for you guys to get the kid perspective from our secondary students. Then we would let the kids out. That was the goal, to put that there, to get them home. A lot of them are exhausted or at home. And then you guys could go into your business meeting with the various, we've got some discussions every night, as you would expect, some first reading policies or some updates and some of the things you can feedback on.
Okay, we forgot to put quotes around retreat for the spring retreat. I don't foresee a need in January. I don't know where that need may come in. I know that that's a great place to have the David evaluation conversation, as well as whatever else we need in more detail, but I don't know what those topics may be or when that would need to be. So we can always handle David's. We did, and I think we just handled David's stuff in probably executive session.
Into the board meeting, you definitely want to. It may be more, I might suggest, I'm waiting to see how the communications work comes back. Right now they're finishing up focus groups. I've got Josh Buckberg working on finishing up kind of the technology side of interfaces and communications, which has security as well as things just communicating with people, and then some of the messaging and stuff. And there's also staff feedback. There's a staff survey which can communicate some of our storyline, which I want to unpack with you guys. But February might be the sweet spot for that, because I mean, in January I need to talk to staff about their own data before I bring it to you guys. And so trying to develop some strategies, but there may be a good opportunity in February to use everybody's time well and look at our communications and the stories. Do we want to influence the stories to deliver? And we want to put on the main kind of mainstreams. So
I would not be opposed to like a, what was it, to maybe the second Tuesday?
Yeah.
Second and fourth Tuesday meeting, like a special meeting. This is retreat days and all that. We had some conversations before.
Okay.
Tuesday
That's a
night.
good idea. That might work. But that would give me a chance to work with staff, some of the perception data, so we can share that with you guys, and also get some of these communication master plans, a draft, and some stuff, put it all together in a comprehensive view for you to consider. And then you could also do my evaluation of the contract.
Beautiful. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Bang. 9:18. Mike's off.